Once, there were cities and rivers here, but now only merciless sand remains. In the depths of the dunes lurk monsters that few ever escape from. People scrap among themselves like mutts over a trash pile. But in this wasteland there is one special guy, the only one who can bend the sand to his will. The whole world lies at his feet, and his power grows stronger every day. But he was not always like this. Once, outside prison, he crossed the line, he killed a man, and that sealed his fate. For that, they tossed him into a mining pit along with the other rejects just like him. In a fight with one of the inmates, the bus carrying them to hard labor suddenly jolted. A massive sand beast burst up from underground and began swallowing the vehicle whole. Xian had already made peace with death, thought it was over. But something snapped inside him, and wild energy surged through his body. He suddenly felt the sand responding to his will. Then the MC fired a sand blaster from the inside, blasting a hole right through that creature. He crawled out, barely catching his breath, stepped forward, realizing he was still alive. With glowing eyes and sand-stained blood on his face, he looks reborn. Standing before the corpse of the monster, he repeats his promise to survive. He feels the new power pulsing through every cell in his body. For the first time, he realizes he may have undergone an awakening. The dead sandworm still thrashes around him, but now the desert itself seems to answer his movements. A huge section of the creature crashes down toward him. Instead of panicking, Xian braces himself and invites the attack. Before he can test himself, a new man appears and dismisses him as an obstacle to his own experiment. Xian barely registers the interruption before the stranger moves. A single overwhelming strike sends Xian flying through the air. He slams into the sand, hurt and stunned by the sheer force. Watching from below, he realizes someone else has arrived who is far beyond him. Even through the pain, Xian can only marvel at how close death came again. He jokes weakly about the man's absurd height, trying to steady himself in front of someone terrifying. The newcomer calmly tells the others it is time to head back down to the ground floor. His authority is so absolute that the order is treated as final. He drives his enormous sword straight through the sandworm's body to pin it in place. Xian watches in disbelief as the impossible becomes effortless for this man. The others praise their captain, Jiang Yongbeam, while he casually complains that the sword is stuck after killing the worm too easily. A lively blue-haired woman proudly introduces the captain, and Xian learns he is looking at the leader of this group. She boasts that this is just what their captain does, while Xian is left wondering when she even appeared beside him. The answer comes immediately when his arm starts freezing under her touch, revealing that she is dangerous in her own right. The captain downplays the sandworm as no real threat and casually addresses the woman as Giselle. He studies Xian in silence, already weighing what he has seen. Xian and Giselle bicker in the background while the captain remains unimpressed. Giselle cheerfully leans in, enjoying Xian's confusion. She suddenly yanks him around with playful force, making it clear she can overpower him whenever she wants. She pins him down like a toy while he struggles helplessly beneath her. Still amused, she decides to inspect what kind of ability and rank he might have. But when she checks, her confidence falters. She tells the captain that Xian is not an awakener at all, which shocks Xian as much as it does her. Then she notices the real anomaly. He has no visible rank insignia. Xian insists that makes no sense, because every awakener is supposed to have one. Before the mystery can be explored, another teammate shouts that sunset is coming and they need to move immediately. Giselle asks what to do with Xian, noting that leaving him behind would kill him, while Xian bitterly reminds her she nearly tore his arm off. The captain makes his decision after a brief look at Xian. Xian meets that look and understands he is being judged, not rescued out of kindness. The captain orders them to take Xian along in the Dodge since he was headed for the mine anyway. A military vehicle races across the desert as the group withdraws before nightfall. Inside, the team complains that their captain always runs off alone and nearly gets them all killed by the timing. While they argue about the setting sun and the danger of being caught out, Xian lies in the back pretending indifference. Even there, he quietly tests the way sand now stirs around him. A tiny spike of sand rises at his command, confirming the power is real. He concludes that he has definitely awakened an ability, but the missing insignia still bothers him. He recalls that the others could not see any rank mark on him, and that its color seemed wrong even when he sensed it himself. Then he realizes the answer. Whatever mark he has is the same color as sand, making it nearly invisible. He remembers that rank insignia glow according to an awakeness type. Magic types shine blue, like Giselle. Martial types shine red, like the captain. There are supposedly rarer categories beyond those, but none that explain what he has. An ability that manipulates sand is something he has never even heard of before. Even if his visible grade is only F rank, he can feel that the true potential of this power is far greater than that label. That realization leaves him grinning for the first time. He decides to hide his power for now and quietly endure until he can make it fully his own. In his mind, the desert is no longer a graveyard but the stage on which he will rise. The convoy reaches the mine, a fortress-like settlement built beneath towering stone spires. Xian takes in the mana crystal mine and realizes it is less a tunnel than a functioning outpost city. A guard orders him to follow and mocks him for still being tied up. The others watch as Xian is led deeper inside, already being absorbed into the mine's harsh routine. Giselle brushes off the whole incident as coincidence, but the captain remains unconvinced. He flatly says Xian's survival was not luck. The captain keeps thinking about the impossible details he witnessed. His attention returns to the strange hole blasted through the sandworm. He regrets not asking the boy's name, convinced they will cross paths again. Back in Neo Seoul, Xian had once moved through the city as just another invisible nobody among predators and prey. Now he enters another brutal society, one crowded with criminals, laborers, and survivors all trying to endure. As a guard cuts his restraints, Xian notes that the mine is practically a whole underground town, not just a worksite. He remembers how little anyone valued his life before, when even being abandoned felt normal. And with that same cold certainty, he now wonders what everyone will do once they realize he is no longer powerless. After being brushed off, the young man keeps wandering the district in search of food and notices a place to eat. He approaches a street stall and tries to get the vendor's attention. Something there immediately catches him off guard and makes him focus. A labor propaganda poster reminds him that this city glorifies workers as the force that keeps Neo's soul shining. The old vendor uses that slogan to bait him into thinking about what really powers the city. He points out the contradiction: if Neo's soul runs a man of crystals, the labor rhetoric is a lie. The young man presses for the truth, demanding to know what the real energy source is. The vendor answers with a blunt accusation that the true fuel is people. He elaborates that workers are driven until they collapse, and their bodies are simply replaced, making human lives the city's most disposable resource. When the young man notes how much the old man seems to know, the vendor brushes it off as the curiosity that comes with surviving to old age. The conversation turns personal when the vendor brings up the young man's time inside a sandworm, showing that news about him has already spread. The vendor warns that this place is not a refuge, but a trap where desperate people come thinking they can earn money, only to be consumed. When the young man insists he came for profit, the vendor mocks him and tells him to look at something important. What he has shown is a storage area packed with abandoned boxes, like the remains of people who never made it out. The young man asks what the pile means, and the vendor treats it as obvious evidence of accumulated human waste. He spells it out cruelly. Those belongings are all that remain of fools who came here, and he expects the young man to end the same way. He explains that everyone entering the mine clings to the hope of escaping with their lives. In that desperation, they sell off whatever they can just to postpone ruin. But all those sacrifices only buy a little more time and solve nothing. Eventually, they all fall into the same end, surrendering to the mine after exhausting every excuse to keep going. To him, the dead here leave behind no legacy at all, only more refuse. Rather than be intimidated, the young man coldly says he is curious what kind of remains the old man himself will leave. He cuts off the lecture and asks for the price of the food. The vendor names an absurd price and justifies it by claiming everything in this place is precious. The young man realizes he is being exploited for being new and admits he cannot pay that much. As he protests, nearby men begin closing in, making it clear the stall is backed by force. The threat becomes explicit when armed thugs surround him with blades drawn. He tries to back out carefully, saying he refuses to pay and hoping to leave without provoking them. Before he can move, he senses someone slipping in behind him. The danger tightens around him, and he realizes he is trapped. The vendor reveals this was the point all along. A weak old man could only run such an open racket here because stronger predators stand behind him. The young man understands he is isolated in hostile territory, ringed by killers with no easy escape. The vendor calmly leaves the next move to him, confident the outcome is already decided. In defiance, the young man drives his skewer down and prepares to resist instead of surrendering. He argues that the claimed debt is nonsense and tries one last time to settle things with words. The vendor pretends to be reasonable and offers another form of payment. He names the real target, the mana crystal hidden in the young man's pocket. The young man is shaken that even this secret has already become common knowledge. The vendor demands the crystal and promises, with false generosity, to value it fairly. That demand pushes the young man into remembering how much he already sacrificed to protect that crystal. A thug grabs his head while he desperately tries to stall for another option. Instead of negotiating, the thug starts forcing him down, ready to crush any resistance. Another thug urges immediate violence, but his threat is cut short. A sudden strike called Sand Blaster severs the shouting thug's arm in an instant. The surrounding crowd freezes in shock as the severed limb is left in plain view. The attack erupts through the group, blasting apart the encirclement and throwing the ambushers into chaos. For a moment the young man's killing intent surges to the surface, showing how close he is to snapping. A hand clamps down on his head and yanks him back before he can fully lose control. The cook, now acting oddly casual, checks whether he had mentally drifted off, and the young man realizes with a curse that he was slipping into a dangerous vision or impulse. The old vendor remains at his stall as a blade slams down nearby, showing the confrontation is still very much alive. A young man presents a mana crystal to an old broker, expecting a meaningful payout for something he clearly risked himself to obtain. The old man inspects the crystal and casually judges it to be worth only 100 sol, immediately setting the tone for a swindle. The seller explodes in protest, realizing the offer is absurdly low for an item he believes should finally buy him some relief. Instead of backing down, he bitterly mocks the market itself, recognizing that in this place scarcity lets people exploit desperation. Before he can push further, he is violently slammed down, a blunt reminder that outrage gives him no power here. Pinned by force, he swallows his rage and decides that however badly he wants revenge, this is not the moment to challenge the old man. Bleeding but still defiant, he accepts the deal outwardly and demands his change, choosing survival over pride. The old man warns him about thieves in the area while openly treating him like one, making clear that humiliation is part of the transaction. Amused by the boy's first visit, the broker offers him a single item from a junk pile as the remainder of the payment. The promised change turns out to be access to a heap of discarded goods, forcing the boy to search for value in what others threw away. He digs through the trash in frustration, convinced at first that the old man has sent him into a useless dump. Watching him search anyway, the old man is entertained by the stubborn refusal to accept a total loss. That persistence leads the boy to keep sorting through the pile, and the old man quietly recognizes a hard-to-kill spirit in him. Among the junk, the boy suddenly notices something that feels different enough to stop him mid-search. The old man identifies it as an object left behind by a caravan long ago, offering no sign that it should matter. Unable to find anything better, the boy chooses the strange hourglass and takes it with him. The broker dismisses his choice as another attraction to worthless things, but the boy no longer cares about the old man's opinion. As he leaves, he asks the old man's name, turning their ugly transaction into something he intends to remember. The old man answers by shouting that he is Klexi, making sure the name sticks. The boy gives his own name, Zion, and makes it clear he would prefer never to meet Klexi again. Klexi laughs off the farewell, suggesting he expects fate to drag the boy back sooner or later. Later, alone with the hourglass, Zion studies it as if testing whether the worthless trinket hides some use. The object responds with a precise warning that everything will collapse in about 10 minutes, proving it is no ordinary scrap. Back in the miner's quarters, Zion settles himself and prepares to probe the item carefully rather than react blindly. He steadies his breathing, trying to enter the focused state he associates with awakening power. Maintaining that rhythm, he concentrates harder, hoping the hourglass will reveal a connection to his dormant ability. The hourglass gives him a simple command to move, as though it recognizes him and expects obedience. Zion peers into it, and sees himself reflected through the frame, deepening the sense that the object is somehow tied to him. When nothing like an awakening follows, he clicks his tongue and concludes the item is not directly connected to unlocking his power. Even so, he cannot shake the certainty that this was somehow his first encounter with something he already knew. That contradiction stirs a strong déjà vu, making him feel as if the hourglass had been waiting specifically for him. The familiarity only makes the mystery stranger, leaving him unsettled by how both intimate and entirely new the sensation is. His thoughts are cut short when a brutal miner barges in and immediately establishes dominance with violence and insults. The man demands to know why a newcomer is here at all and invokes Bak Manho's authority, making clear Zion has entered a hierarchy built on fear. Zion tries to answer with his name and asks for directions, but his attempt at basic sense only provokes more contempt. The miner attacks again, and Zion is thrown around before he can properly defend himself. As the abuse continues, Zion's anger hardens into a silent refusal to keep enduring it. He finally snaps back, telling the man to shut up even as another crushing blow drives him into the floor. Pinned under the assault, he is mocked as weak and useless, the kind of unawakened laborer everyone here expects to break. The insults become a lesson in the camp's cruelty. People like Zion are expected to accept beatings and silence as their place. Once the man has vented enough, he abruptly shifts from punishment to orders and tells Zion to get up and follow him. Even in hurting, Zion can do little but clutch himself and submit for now. Even while battered, he memorizes Bok Manho's name and quietly vows that one day he will kill him. Zion is taken to Sector 3's mine entrance, where the real shape of his new life comes into view. Bok Manho is welcomed by another worker, and Zion is treated not as a person but as fresh labor that needs to be outfitted. As equipment is forced onto him, he learns the rules. Any mana crystal he finds must be turned in, and even his gear will be deducted from his wages. When Zion asks the obvious question about how much he will actually earn, his ignorance is treated as stupidity rather than innocence. The answer comes as another blow, this time smashing into his helmet to punish him for speaking out of turn. Bok Manho and the others berate him for needing basic things explained, reducing him to a fool whose labor and debt already belong to them. Finally, Bok Manho orders that Zion be sent to Tunnel 972, and the uneasy reaction around him suggests he has just been assigned somewhere especially bad. Cornered by violent miners, the young worker gives in and agrees to go in their place rather than keep resisting. As he is shoved forward, the men threaten to kill him if he talks about the mana crystals, making it clear he is being used and discarded. Deep in the mine, the place is described as a deadly gamble where luck alone decides whether someone returns alive. On the way down, he learns the mine also hides vice and crime, showing this underground world runs on the same corruption as the city above. His escort jokes that with local thugs profiting here, the business around this place must be thriving. Trying to sound casual, the boy mentions he bruises easily, but the older miner implies his physical injury is not the real danger ahead. He explains that no one sent into this area has ever come back hurt because no one has come back at all. They arrive at the forbidden site, Tunnel 972, where the air itself feels ominous. When the boy asks if all he has to do is collect mana crystals and return, the answer is blunt. He will not be coming back. The miner reveals that more than a dozen people have already vanished here, and even their fate remains unknown. At the threshold, the boy apologizes and thanks the man for at least bringing him this far. The miner, shaken by his own guilt, thanks the boy for entering a place no one else dared to face. Realizing that means the missing workers are probably dead, the boy panics when the miner abandons him and starts climbing away. Left alone, he stares upward in disbelief as the betrayal fully sinks in. Fear turns into rage, and he vents at the people who dumped him here while swinging his pickaxe in frustration. The swing goes wrong, and the pickaxe slips from his hands before he can finish cursing them. He lunges after it in alarm as the tool is pulled away by something unnatural. Following it deeper, he finds himself in a strange cavern filled with an unsettling, unfamiliar presence. He realizes the tunnel is saturated with unusually dense mana and suspects ordinary workers never sensed what was really here. As the mana thickens around him, he understands that a normal person would have already collapsed from overload and wonders what could be generating so much power. He suddenly notices a clue in the haze and focuses on it. He spots the lost pickaxe and rushes toward it in relief. Even though the handle is broken, he counts himself lucky just to have recovered it. That relief vanishes when a red vortex opens beneath him and swallows him mid-step. He realizes too late that he has triggered something far worse than a cave hazard. As he falls, he identifies the phenomenon as a portal and understands he is being dragged somewhere unknown. His helmet and pickaxe are flung away as the portal tears him through the air. The broken pickaxe is left behind, marking the point where he vanished. From elsewhere, a grim judgment is made that the boy will die soon. While falling, he remembers the misery of his life and how little he had wanted beyond surviving without becoming a burden. He recalls being beaten for stealing food, driven by nothing more than hunger. He remembers fleeing from a brutal crowd, wishing he could at least have the freedom to dream. He remembers being hunted and threatened with death, his life treated as worthless. As the fall continues, his memories narrow to one simple desire, to live normally without constant fear of dying. The violence in his memories peaks with an order to drag him away for punishment. Clinging to consciousness, he bitterly admits that an ordinary life was all he ever wanted. He crashes into the ground and lies stunned as hot dust and smoke billow around him. When he forces himself up, the oppressive heat and thick air tell him he has landed somewhere far worse than the mine. Touching the ground, he identifies the powder around him as ash. The realization leaves him tense as he starts piecing together where the portal has taken him. He remembers that portals lead into dungeons and understands with dread that he has fallen inside one. Looking out at a landscape of fire and molten rock, he confirms he is trapped in a volcanic dungeon. Before he can fully process it, the same strange force that took his pickaxe erupts nearby again. He has a chunk of the ground, only for it to begin heating unnaturally in his hand. The sudden burn makes him throw it away, proving the environment itself can kill him. He accepts that this is no dream and remembers that even a major city has to prepare extensively before entering dungeons like this. Examining the ash more carefully, he concludes it is volcanic residue and realizes he must escape quickly before the heat destroys his lungs. He tears cloth from his clothes, improvising protection as he prepares to move. Forcing himself to think logically, he decides that if the dungeon has an entrance, it must also have an exit. He judges that the exit is most likely near the highest point in the dungeon, the blazing mountain peak ahead. Trapped in a volcanic dungeon with his magic beasts gone, Xian realizes staying still means death from heat and ash, so his only chance is to keep moving. He commits to the fastest route he can find and throws himself into a desperate sprint for survival. To keep his nerve from breaking, he hypes himself up as the kind of man who never quits. His first leap barely succeeds, and he crashes onto a narrow patch of solid ground just ahead of the lava. Landing leaves him hanging on the edge, and he immediately understands how close he came to dying. As the ground gives way beneath him, he reaches out in panic and begs for help. He nearly falls into the lava, but a sudden force yanks him away from the molten surge. Shaken and trying to save face, he insists even lava is not enough to scare him. Once safe for the moment, he drops to the ground and struggles to catch his breath. He clenches his fist and forces himself to hold on to his resolve. His fear turns into rage at Manhwa, and he vows he will kill him the moment he escapes this place. He quickly realizes anger only makes the heat feel worse, so he forces himself to calm down. Refocusing, he swears he will survive no matter what it takes, and crawl his way back out. He calculates the path ahead and concludes he only needs to make 4 more jumps. That number becomes his lifeline. If he can clear 4 more gaps, he can live. He stops overthinking and orders himself to move before fear can paralyze him again. Rejecting the idea of dying in a place like this, he launches himself forward with renewed determination. He commits fully, refusing to stop even as his body reaches its limit, but his next jump carries him straight toward the open jaws of a massive crocodile-like monster rising from the lava. The creature erupts upward and snaps shut where he should have been, missing him by a hair. Its huge body crashes back into the lava, turning the whole area into a violent spray of molten rock. Xian is flung aside by the blast and barely avoids being swallowed by the lava below. The monster circles beneath him, proving the route is even deadlier than he thought. Its body is so overheated that molten cracks glow through its hide, making contact with it almost as dangerous as the lava itself. As Xian falls, someone catches him by the back of his vest and hauls him clear, astonishing him because even the volcanic ash is being pushed away. He realizes his ability to control volcanic ash has somehow saved his life again, though he still does not understand the full situation. The rescue ends roughly, and he is dropped hard onto solid ground near the monster's glowing maw. Lying there, he concludes the dungeon itself is more lethal than the magic beasts inside it. The monster calms him completely, leaving him unable to breathe or think clearly. For a moment, he genuinely believes he is about to die. Even so, his hand tightens, showing he has not given up yet. He drags himself up and bitterly protests that after surviving this long, dying here before even living a real life would be unbearably unfair. He plants his foot, and forces himself back into motion one more time. Preparing to manipulate the ash again, he apologizes to Old Man Yama and jokes that the old man would rather have a crocodile bag than lose him. Before he can act, the lava beast surges up again and bears down on him. Then an unfamiliar voice cuts in, amused by Xian's ability. Startled, Xian wonders if the voice belongs to Old Man Yama. The speaker mocks the idea, taking particular interest in Xian's power to manipulate sand like ash. A new figure suddenly drops from above, drawing Xian's full attention away from the monster. The stranger reveals himself as an old man, but not the one Xian expected. The white-haired elder descends with wild confidence, almost delighted by the chaos below. As he falls, he grips his weapon and prepares to strike. His arrival carries overwhelming force, making it clear he is no ordinary bystander. Xian realizes the old man is about to hit the battlefield like a meteor. The elder slams down with catastrophic impact, blasting the area apart. The shockwave tears through the rocky ground and sends debris flying in every direction. Chunks of stone and molten fragments are hurled across the lava field by the force of the blow. Xian is thrown back screaming as the blast catches him too. Dazed and half-deaf from the impact, he struggles to understand what just happened, and who this terrifying old man is. As his hearing starts to return, his thoughts jump from recognizing the elder to the more urgent question of what became of the monster. In a burning cavern, a young man faces an overwhelming old warrior and immediately senses that this opponent exists on an entirely different level. The old man's presence feels unlike mere strength, making the youth realize he is confronting something far beyond an awakened fighter. As the warrior steps through the flames with calm authority, the gap between them becomes undeniable. A single step from the old man shakes the ground, turning his approach itself into a threat. Still attacking outright, he demands the boy's name as if deciding whether he is worth sparing. The youth is too rattled to process the question, still trying to understand what is happening. The old man gives him a brutal deadline to answer, making it clear silence will mean death. He begins counting down with complete confidence that he controls the boy's life. Each number tightens the pressure, leaving the youth frozen under the threat. By the final count, the boy can only stare in panic at the man reflected in his eye. When the countdown ends, the old warrior moves to kill him without hesitation. Only then does the youth finally realize the man had been asking the question, not attacking at random. The old man dismisses the confusion and repeats his demand, treating the boy's fear as stupidity. He prepares to strike again, but pauses when the youth finally starts responding. A single killing command from the old man shows how casually he can decide another person's fate. The boy desperately begs for his life and blurts out that he simply did not understand, which makes the old man realize he is not mute after all. Forced into clarity, the youth shouts that his name is Xian. The old man instantly mocks the name, and Xian's fear gives way to offended disbelief. Before Xian can recover, a violent surge of energy tears through the cavern, proving the danger around them is real. As Xian shields himself, the old man introduces himself as Dao Den with absurd calm in the middle of the chaos. Dao Den repeats his name while Xian, overwhelmed, demands to know what he is doing and why he keeps threatening him. When Xian protests the insults and intimidation, Dao Den acts as though none of that matters. Xian tries to acknowledge that the old man saved him, but his frustration boils over before he can even finish thanking him. Dao Den explains that Xian was caught in a snare, speaking like a veteran lecturing an ignorant novice. He reveals that when a dungeon overloads with mana, it tears open another entrance and vents that mana through the gap. At the same time, the dungeon drags in living creatures, and Dao Den identifies that pole is the snare that trapped Xian. He adds that most people would never witness such a thing, meaning Xian survived a freak event through sheer luck. Even while learning this, Xian can only argue about being called a dumbass, showing how badly the conversation keeps derailing. Fed up, Dao Den physically forces Xian to focus and orders him to gather mana into his eyes. When Xian resists, Dao Den shuts him down and instructs him to refine the mana so he can truly see. He tells Xian to imagine replacing his sight with mana itself and to feel the flow around him. As Xian obeys, a hidden shape begins to emerge within his vision. For the first time, Xian perceives something concealed in the cavern and recalls in shock. Dao Den reveals it is a cloaked monster that preyed on victims without them ever realizing it was there until they were consumed. Xian is horrified to learn that such a predator had been right beside him without giving off any detectable presence. He realizes that without Daeden's intervention earlier, he would have died without even understanding why. That realization deepens into grudging awe as Xian recognizes the old man has now saved his life twice. He begins to wonder just how powerful Dao Den really is. Trying to understand, Xian asks who Dao Den is, but the old man only snaps back with more insults and his already given name. Xian clarifies that he means Daeden's true identity, his impossible power, and where exactly they are. Dao Den answers only part of it, saying they are inside a dungeon and that this place is his hunting ground. As for who he is, he tells Xian to use those newly opened eyes and find out for himself. He invokes Cryon, signaling the start of some formidable technique, or authority. The cavern erupts with violent force as Dao Den unleashes that power into the surroundings. The surge is so intense that Xian can only clutch his head and endure it. Stunned, he can barely comprehend what the old man is doing before the answer appears around him. A swarm of fiery black creatures manifests overhead, transforming the cavern into a nightmare and revealing the scale of Daedan's control. As Xian stares up in horror, Dao Den calls out to him with contempt rather than reassurance. Dao Den declares that if Xian has any worth at all, he must survive this on his own. With that, the old warrior abandons him to the attacking monsters, leaving Xian to face the dungeon's terror alone. A young man, already battered and bleeding, realizes the flaming bird-like monsters are far too fast for him to outrun. He tries to keep moving anyway, bracing himself as another attack slices in before he can properly react. Their strike schemes past his legs so quickly that he barely avoids being torn apart. Frustrated, he understands he cannot escape and that the swarm is deliberately worrying him down from one side. He lashes out in desperation, but his counter is blind and ineffective against their speed. The monsters dive through the flames again, pressing the attack from multiple angles. Forced entirely onto defense, he shields himself as their assault keeps carving around him. Stand and failing eyesight leave him unable to track them at all, and panic starts to overtake him. He realizes that if nothing changes, this fight will end with him dying where he stands. Remembering the old man who already saved him twice, he is ashamed that he might still die uselessly. A voice suddenly cuts through the chaos, jolting him out of his spiral. The old man demands his attention and explains that his hearing is damaged, so the boy needs to focus and understand quickly. The boy forces himself to think of some way to perceive enemies his eyes cannot follow. As the swarm closes in, he berates himself and struggles to think under pressure. The old man bluntly calls him a fool, not to insult him, but to force him to stop panicking and listen. He gives the boy the key, gather mana into the eyes and sharpen its purity through concentration. Then he pushes the lesson further, telling him to stop relying on sight and instead perceive the world directly through mana. Even as another monster lunges, the boy begins trying to apply that instruction. The attack crashes down around him, but now he starts sensing more than he can physically see. With the old man's guidance, he shifts from watching bodies to feeling the monster's mana itself. He learns the rule immediately. When hostile mana enters striking range, he must answer with the shortest possible counterattack. Acting on that instinct, he finally intercepts one of the creatures and realizes the old man had prepared him for exactly this moment. As he drives through the attack, he wonders if the old man had foreseen this entire situation from the start. While the boy struggles to comprehend him, the old man steps fully into the battle against the larger monsters. Far from strained, the old man revels in the fight, delighted to finally cut loose again. He unleashes a devastating slash that tears through the battlefield and shatters the monster's formation. Instead of slowing down, he demands even more resistance, treating the battle like long-denied sport. He charges deeper into the dungeon, calling for the monsters to keep coming. A gigantic beast rises to meet him, but he confronts it head-on without hesitation. Seeing the creature's size only disappoints him, as if it still falls short of what he wanted. He closes the distance and cuts into the giant monster at point-blank range. Even while carving it apart, he grumbles that dungeons used to produce far more monsters in his day. Watching this massacre, the boy is stunned by how effortlessly the old man overwhelms creatures that had nearly killed him. The scale of the destruction leaves him almost speechless as the battlefield is reduced to corpses and molten ruin. He dares to hope the nightmare is finally over and asks if there are no monsters left. But even before an answer comes, he senses that the danger has not ended. A violent surge erupts through the dungeon, shaking the ground and announcing something far worse. The shockwave knocks the boy off balance and leaves him gasping. He collapses and retches, overwhelmed by the force of what just arrived. The old man identifies the roar at once. The area's true boss has awakened. He explains that every dungeon has a final ruler tied to its source, and this is the one he came here to face. The boss reveals itself as a massive winged creature wrapped in blue force, confirming the old man's real objective. The boy stares in horror, barely able to process the scale of the thing before them. By contrast, the old man greets its arrival with satisfaction, as though an awaited rival has finally shown up. He names the monster Crimson Drake and openly welcomes the battle. When the boy assumes that means dragon, the old man corrects him. It is not a true dragon, though it is still at least B rank. That rank makes the boy realize the blue distortion around it must signify a special defensive trait. He identifies the phenomenon as a force field surrounding the drake. Impressed, The old man notes the boy knows of force fields and explains that monsters can awaken higher traits the way humans gain rank insignias. He clarifies that a red force field marks martial-type traits, revealing that the Crimson Drake is not just powerful but specialized for combat. The young man realizes the blue barrier surrounding the creature marks it as a magic-type enemy. He faces a colossal crystalline drake rising through the cavern, its presence immediately overwhelming the battlefield. The revelation hits him hard. This is exactly the kind of overpowered opponent he cannot handle. Before he can recover, a red-black force tears across the drake's barrier from above, interrupting the monster's dominance. The young man looks up in shock as something even more dangerous descends into the fight. His instincts and experience both fail him, because the scale of power in front of him no longer makes sense. A white-haired warrior drops toward the drake with complete confidence, treating the impossible monster as prey. He drives straight down onto the drake, turning his fall into a brutal opening strike. The drake lashes back with claws and force, but the attacker stays on it. The warrior lands on the beast's body and keeps pressing the assault at close range. Rather than struggling, he grins, already enjoying the violence. The drake gathers a concentrated blast in its mouth while the warrior remains within striking distance. Seeing the counterattack only amuses him more. The drake unleashes its power point blank, engulfing the area around him. Even while taking the hit, the warrior laughs and taunts the drake for trying to hurt him. He answers the attack with a promise that he will personally end the drake's pain by killing it himself. He declares that this battle is the drake's funeral, not his. Watching this madness, the young man concludes that he may be the one about to die instead. As the two monsters in human and draconic form keep tearing into each other, he runs for his life and bitterly wishes they would settle things without destroying everything around them. The shockwaves catch him anyway, dragging him into the collateral damage. He is hurled violently across the cavern by the force of their clash. As he skids and stumbles, he can hardly believe mere aftershocks from their fight are enough to wreck him. He tries to steady himself and stay conscious amid the chaos. Meanwhile, the white-haired warrior revels in the battle, treating it like entertainment. He calls out to the Crimson Drake as if inviting it to keep playing. The drake's movement and power rip open the cavern floor in a fiery, explosive surge. The young man is left standing alone on a crumbling patch of ground as destruction erupts around him. He realizes too late that the ground beneath him is no longer stable. With no good options left, he braces for the worst. The collapsing terrain gives way and sends him tumbling down the cavern wall. He bounces and rolls helplessly, battered by the fall. At last he is thrown out into open air above a blazing drop. Dazed and bloodied, he struggles to process that he is still falling. The danger finally focuses in his mind with absolute clarity. Above him, the battle continues as the drake and the warrior crash through the broken cavern after him. The warrior mocks the drake for failing to finish him despite all its power. He boasts that even a dungeon boss has been reduced to charging straight at him in desperation. The drake answers by condensing another intense sphere of magic in its jaws. The warrior recognizes the attack as worthy of a boss, and is pleased that the drake still has more to show. The drake fires a devastating beam that carves through the cavern. The blast surges forward with enough force to erase rock in its path. When the light clears, the drake is still charged with power and searching for its target. The warrior's voice reveals he has already avoided the attack and repositioned nearby. He closes in through the wreckage, bringing a blood-red killing intent down on the drake. The drake opens its jaws to answer, but the warrior is already inside its reach. Planting his massive sword in his footing, he reveals that he has hunted this creature across the desert for a year just to corner it here. He explains that the drake's heart will be used to temper Cryon, the great blade he carries. Having finally secured what he came for, he calmly sentences the drake to death. Cryon is driven down with gathering force, its power concentrating at the point of impact. The finishing blow pierces through the drake's core, and the hunt ends in a burst of shattered magic and blood. A massive, ominous sword surges with violent power as the battle's aftermath still rages around it. That weapon's energy intensifies, as if answering a will stronger than before. The old swordsman stands at the center of the upheaval, unfazed as the force behind him tears through the dungeon. The sword settles into his grasp, still radiating destructive heat and pressure. With calm control, the old man claims the weapon and makes it clear he remains firmly in command. He greets Cryon with amused approval, acknowledging that the boy has grown stronger. Cryon realizes the absurd truth that the voice and the sword really did belong to this deranged old man. Even so, he admits the old man is no fraud at all, but a monstrously powerful survivor who somehow endured after slaying the drake. Cryon tries to explain that he barely survived himself, still shaken by how close he came to dying. The battered body gives out, and he drops hard onto the ground. Lying there, he senses another danger before he can recover. Panic overtakes him as he realizes the collapsing dungeon is about to crush him too. He braces in terror while the ground and debris close in around him. The impact slams down around him, swallowing him in another burst of destruction. When he finds himself still alive again, Cryon can only marvel bitterly at his own stubborn resilience. The old man credits Cryon's survival to reflexes sharpened by enduring the shockwaves of their insane fight, and mockingly praises him for lasting this long. As the dungeon boss's death triggers the dungeon's collapse, the old man grabs Cryon and decides they must leave immediately. Cryon, confused and helpless in the old man's grip, demands to know why he is being carried off. The old man only laughs, enjoying his control over the situation. Then he hurls Cryon away with a mocking farewell, sending him into a swirling escape rift. As he is flung through the void, Cryon curses the old man as even worse than the enemy he already hated. He bursts out of the rift and lands in a vast desert, stunned to find himself alive and outside. Cryon spits him out violently and throws him across the sand. While Cryon struggles to understand where he is, the old man steps through and explains that the collapse-created rift serves as the dungeon's exit. When Cryon asks why the old man did not simply leave on his own, the old man cuts him off and turns serious. He reveals he needs someone with the ability to manipulate sand, and despite Cryon's weakness, he has chosen him and offers him a decision. One path is to head toward Neo's soul and return to the ordinary life Cryon used to live. The other is to follow the old man and become something greater than the pitiful person he is now. Cryon is blindsided by the offer and asks what following him would even mean. The old man admits he cannot promise an end point, the journey could last months, years, or even decades. He demands an answer immediately, forcing Cryon to choose under pressure. The choice is laid bare: safety and familiarity, or a reckless gamble that could easily end in death. The old man presses him one last time, refusing to let him hesitate. Cryon laughs at the idea that this is a real choice at all. He openly calls the old man insane for expecting him to abandon comfort and stability. For this he spells out the absurdity of trading shelter and an easy life for a brutal trek through a scorching wasteland. The old man confirms that this is exactly what he is asking. Cryon acts as if that settles the matter and seems ready to reject him. Instead he steps to the old man's side and declares that he will go with him. He explains that he cannot ignore those who humiliate him, but he is still too weak to take revenge yet. That vengeance, he warns with a grin, includes the old man himself. Cryon admits the old man is stronger than anyone he has ever seen and likely stronger than anyone he will ever meet. The old man mocks that confidence by suggesting such certainty will only get Cryon killed. Cryon answers with his own certainty. If he follows this monster, he will surpass everyone. The old man accepts the resolve but warns that such conviction will one day become a source of regret. Even so, he orders Cryon to follow, and the two set off together on a long journey while bickering immediately becomes their new normal. Under a blazing, merciless sky, their path stretches onward through the desert. Before long, Cryon is already shouting for the old man to slow down. After hours of marching through the heat he begs for a break while the old man keeps moving ahead without sympathy. The old man leads on in silence, carrying the cursed sword as their harsh new partnership begins. A young man staggers through the desert, overwhelmed by the heat and lashing out in frustration at his own helplessness. As the temperature crushes him, he realizes the desert is far hotter than he can endure for long. The sand itself turns every step into a struggle, and he sees that heat stroke or dehydration will get him if nothing changes. While he wonders what he is supposed to do, the old swordsman dismisses him as a fool for failing to use even a fraction of his power. The old man points out the obvious weakness in him. He can manipulate sand, yet he cannot even walk on it properly. The youth protests that he only awakened recently, and cannot be expected to master his power overnight. The old man rejects that excuse outright, making it clear that timing means nothing to him. When the boy hides behind his low rank and the old man's greater experience, he tries to frame his failure as something inevitable. The old man cuts through that self-pity and demands to know why rank should matter at all. He asks the boy to face a harsher truth. Strength is not something people are simply born with, and even natural gifts do not excuse surrender. He presses harder, insisting that the boy is still fortunate compared to many others and has no right to give up because he was not specially favored. The rebuke leaves the young man silent as the old man's pressure finally breaks through his complaints. With the lecture turning practical, the old man tells him to stop whining and start thinking about how to use the ability he already has. He reminds the boy that this power belongs to him, so the answer has to come from his own understanding. The old man makes his lesson explicit. No one else can tell him exactly how to grow, and he must discover for himself how to use his gift to overcome the desert. Before the boy can answer, the old man tightens his grip and turns the lesson into immediate pressure. He threatens death if the boy cannot figure it out now, forcing him to think under real fear instead of excuses. Driven into action, the boy channels his power into the sand beneath his feet. Sand erupts around him as his ability finally responds in a visible, controlled way. He quickly gauges the limits of his control, realizing he can affect sand within a radius of about 5 meters and deciding that should be enough. He identifies the real problem, the sand swallowing his feet, and he reasons that solving that alone would reduce the strain on his mana. From that insight, he tries compressing the sand underfoot into a solid surface. The idea works, and for the first time he can move without sinking, giving him a burst of excitement and confidence. That success is tempered by a new problem when he realizes the mana cost is too high to sustain for long. He experiments again, focusing mana into both legs instead, and finds walking becomes easier. Even as he refines the method, he notices this approach still avoids truly using his ability, while the old man quietly recognizes the value of his persistence. His trial and error continues until he crashes into the sand, but the old man sees the refusal to quit as the one advantage youth naturally has. Watching him, the old man reassesses him. Despite his low rank, his actual power and mana control seem better than expected. The boy finally lands on a method that works and realizes he has found a practical answer. Proud of his breakthrough, he runs to the old man and explains that he is using mana to keep the sand from touching his feet. His relief immediately turns into cocky taunting as he boasts that he can now walk comfortably and mocks the old man. The old man answers the bragging with a blunt strike that drops him instantly. Standing over him, the old man dismisses the boy's antics as wasteful and warns that unnecessary effort will only get him killed. As the boy lies gasping, the old man orders him to breathe, making survival itself the next lesson. When the boy comes to later in the dark, he is disoriented and barely aware of where he is. The old man, still nearby, greets his recovery with irritation and claims tending to him is only a burden. The boy complains about his battered condition, and the old man tosses him dried meat instead of sympathy. The unfamiliar food only adds to the boy's confusion. The old man tells him to eat and listen, then begins speaking about what the world was like in his own youth. He explains that in those days even the weak could survive, and protecting them was once considered honorable. The boy reflects that the world has changed so much that what should be common sense now feels almost impossible to imagine. The old man cuts off any drifting thoughts and tells him plainly that he can either lie there and die or stand up on his own. Accepting the point, the boy sits up and starts eating. As he listens, he begins to grasp the weight of the old man's long life and experience. He realizes the old man has survived for an extraordinary span of time and must carry an immense history with him. Even so, the boy cannot help noticing that the old man remains abrasive in the smallest things too. He figures out that the jerky is meant to be softened in the mouth to conserve moisture, and recognizes the practical desert logic behind it. That realization leads him to a broader one. The old man is not simply helping him, but forcing him to learn how to survive by discovering answers himself. The thought drifts into a dry joke as he admits there are still basic things about the world he has never even encountered. Wanting more food, he asks the old man for another piece and gets only the usual curt refusal. A young man shivers in the desert night and sneezes, already worn down by the cold. He bitterly realizes he forgot how freezing desert nights can be. His irritation deepens as he blames the old man beside him for talking non-stop and keeping him from sleeping. When the old man starts rambling about thirst and water again, the young man sees it as more senile nonsense. He angrily concludes the old man must have secretly hoarded water for himself. That suspicion turns absurd as he imagines the old man surviving by wringing dew from his clothes and bedding. While grumbling that he will get strong enough to take revenge someday, he is abruptly interrupted. The old man mocks him, and when the youth snaps back, the old man asks whether he can sense what is coming. Confused, the young man tries to understand what he is supposed to notice. He focuses and begins to pick up strange tremors through the ground. A moment later he realizes the vibrations are numerous, not just a couple of approaching threats. The answer appears all at once as a pack closes in from every side in the darkness. The old man identifies them as bighorn hyenas, nocturnal predators caught active at dawn. With the beast circling, the old man taunts the youth and asks whether he still intends to survive without help. The pack lunges, forcing the confrontation to begin immediately. Instead of backing down, the young man defiantly rejects the old man's offer of help. He commits himself to surviving this attack by his own strength. He gathers mana into his hand and prepares a spell despite his fear. He unleashes a broad attack that erupts upward around him in violent spikes of force. As the spell goes off, he instantly senses something is wrong. The attack tears through the area, but too many hyenas are still bearing down on him. Seeing the sheer numbers still coming, he panics and curses the situation. He realizes he may exhaust his mana and die before the beast can finish him, so he forces himself to think. Facing a whole wall of glowing eyes, he understands that brute force alone will get him killed and that efficiency matters more. He starts searching for a way to spend less mana with each attack. Before he can finish thinking, one hyena breaks in close enough to threaten him directly. He smashes it away in frustration, furious that the pack will not even let him think. After taking a wound to the arm, he notices the puncture and his anger gives way to a sudden idea. Staring at the bleeding hole, he realizes he does not need overwhelming destruction after all. As the pack charges again, his new plan takes shape. He stands his ground while the hyenas rush him from all directions. He decides that small lethal openings are enough if he can place them accurately. Acting on that insight, he fires narrow, focused attacks into the oncoming beasts. His fear flips into manic confidence as he accepts that killing them efficiently matters more than obliterating them completely. The old man's earlier lesson returns to him. In battle, wasting mana is the same as shortening his own life. Remembering that he must use only the minimum force needed, he keeps fighting with tighter, more economical strikes. Even while laughing through the chaos, he compares his new method to the old man's habit of taking enemies down one by one. One hyena gets close enough to mock his weak-looking attack, thinking it harmless. The young man answers with pure hostility, refusing to let the beast treat him lightly. Nearby, the old man finally steps in, declaring that every beast around him is about to die. His savage grin makes it clear he has been waiting for this. The young man immediately recognizes that the old man is about to unleash the terrifying attack he used before. The old man roars his intent to wipe out the entire pack at once. A monstrous red-black slash of power rips through the battlefield. The blast carves through the charging hyenas and tears across the desert with overwhelming force. Watching the devastation, the young man realizes there is something unnatural about the old man's power. When the dust settles, the ground is split open and the area is stained with the remains of the slaughter. Surrounded by corpses, the young man wonders whether a human could do this without relying on a special skill. He decides he had better be careful how he talks to the old man from now on, especially as another beast still snarls nearby. The old man casually trades insults with the surviving hyena, mocking its noise and treating it like a nuisance rather than a threat. A giant horned hyena lunges at the white-haired old man, but its attack crashes into an unseen barrier around him. Realizing the old man is protected by a force field and far stronger than he appeared, the beast's confidence turns to alarm. The barrier erupts with violent lightning, blasting through the pack and instantly reversing the fight. The younger boy panics and tries to warn the old man, not yet understanding that the danger is already under control. The old man calmly channels the crackling energy through his hand, treating the slaughter as effortless. The boy freezes in confusion as the old man's overwhelming power makes his warning meaningless. With the hyenas collapsing around him, the old man casually remarks that the lightning was almost refreshing. Once the massacre is finished, he coldly decides the surviving beast should die as well. He tears through the remaining hyena in a single brutal strike, ending the battle outright. Seeing how absurdly one-sided it was, the boy drops his concern and jokes that worrying about the old man was pointless. The old man confirms the threat is gone and turns his attention back to moving on, mocking the boy for still being alive. When the boy notices he is taking a horn, the old man explains that big horn hyenas are useful materials because their lightning trait can be turned into a weapon. He tosses the boy a blade, abruptly shifting from protector to harsh instructor. The old man tells him it is a dagger and makes clear that from now on the boy must secure his own food instead of relying on handouts. He adds practical survival advice, warning that most of the hyena's flesh is toxic but the flank meat is safe to eat. The boy stares blankly at the sudden responsibility until the old man snaps at him to hurry before sunrise. When followed by the order, the boy immediately falls in line. Later, while traveling through the desert, the boy chews his scavenged meat and starts enjoying his new self-sufficiency. He reassures himself that although he is thirsty, at least he has food to keep going. He also takes pride in a newly gained skill, sand walk, which lets him move across the dunes with ease. Feeling cocky, he taunts the old man and jokes that the elder must be jealous of his progress. The old man answers the insolence with a sudden punch. The boy proudly thinks he has finally dodged one of those hits. Instead, he ends up planted face first in the sand, and the old man dismisses his boasting as pathetic. Spitting sand and complaining about his thirst, the boy tries to pass it off as harmless joking. Mid-complaint, he senses moisture in the air and abruptly realizes something may be nearby. When he notices the old man staring the same way, he understands the feeling is real. Hope surges as they conclude there is an oasis just beyond the next rise. The empty dune ahead becomes the final barrier between them and possible salvation. They climb to the crust together, both focused on what lies beyond it. The boy sees the truth and bursts into ecstatic disbelief that the rumored oasis actually exists. Below them lies real water, turning rumor into immediate rescue. Driven by desperation, the boy throws himself down the slope toward it, hardly able to believe he is about to drink again. The old man's expression hardens at once, as if he recognizes a danger the boy does not. Oblivious, the boy races the last stretch and celebrates, reaching the water. He plunges in and basks in the sensation, overwhelmed by relief. The cold water feels miraculous after the desert, and he revels in finally being soaked. He savors the cooling shock spreading through his body, convinced he has been saved. That joy breaks when he notices something unnatural in the water. A warm, blinding light glows beneath the surface, turning the oasis from comfort into threat. As his body suddenly grows heavy and sluggish, he realizes too late that something is wrong. The old man shouts for him to wake up and fight the stupor before it kills him. He sprints toward the shore with full urgency, dropping all pretense of indifference. The boy, half submerged and dazed, can barely react as the old man closes the distance. The source of the false oasis reveals itself. A monstrous creature hidden beneath the water rises to feed. At the last instant, the old man grabs the boy and yanks him away from the creature's strike. The massive beast bursts from the oasis, exposing the trap they nearly walked into. Dragged clear by the old man's pull, the boy recalls in terror as he finally sees what almost swallowed him. The old man places himself between the boy and the monster, ready to confront it head-on. He has a strong grip on his weapon, preparing to strike as the next fight begins. A massive sand angler erupts and crashes down at the oasis, ending the fight in a violent burst of water and sand. The young man stares in stunned disbelief, trying to process the strange sight before him. He realizes the glowing arc in the stormy sky is not a miracle but the lure of the dead monster. The older man identifies the creature as a sand angler, a predator that uses the light on its head to draw victims in and devour them. Seeing the boy's ignorance, the old man's patience gives way to grim recognition. He immediately turns that recognition into discipline, striking the boy for being careless. The old man tears into him for forgetting basic survival lessons and getting complacent. He makes it clear that fools like him are the first to die in the desert if they stop thinking. The boy submits at once, knowing he has earned the rebuke. Without dwelling on it, the old man orders him to skin the monster. He explains that a sand angler is only a low-rank beast, but its soft, elastic belly hide is valuable enough to turn into a robe. When the boy stupidly asks whether the old man needs a robe, the old man is baffled by how badly he missed the point. His irritation explodes as he demands to know how the boy's mind could have become this dull. The boy apologizes, but with an odd smile he also notes that the creature has changed from what he expected. Looking over the corpse, he observes that the sand angler still resembles the fish that once lived on Earth. The old man confirms the resemblance and tells him to study it carefully, though he pretends not to care whether the lesson sticks. The boy admits this is his first time seeing a fish at all, revealing just how distant that old world has become. Even so, he steels himself and starts cutting into the carcass despite his unease. The old man lounges nearby, mocking him while enjoying the feel of the hide and refusing to help. As the boy struggles to cut through the tough material, he decides brute force will not be enough. He forces himself to concentrate and treat the task like a technical problem instead of simple labor. Remembering his training, he channels mana into the blade to increase its cutting power. He refines the process further, shaving a fin down into something thin enough to use as a needle. Then he plans to use carved tendons as thread, trying to turn the monster into workable clothing from scratch. For a moment, he thinks he has found the right approach. But the result is a complete mess, and the old man dismisses his work as ruined trash. Rather than give up, the boy clings to the remaining material and throws himself into another attempt. Time passes into night as he keeps working in the desert. At last he finishes a robe and bursts out in triumph, thrilled that his persistence paid off. After 8 failures, he proudly presents the finished piece and imagines it as something worthy of sale. The old man cuts off his celebration, and the boy instantly panics that his hard-won robe is about to be taken away. Instead, the old man tells him to stop babbling and hands him the sand angler's gallbladder. He explains that the organ is a rare medicine and orders the boy to eat every bit of it. Then he states the stakes plainly: refuse it, and die. With no real choice, the boy takes the disgusting organ while the old man impatiently urges him on. He hesitates for a final second, swallowing his fear. Choosing survival over revulsion, he bites in and braces for unbearable bitterness. Instead, the texture confuses him more than the taste. It feels strangely insubstantial, like chewing a cloud, and no matter how much he eats he never feels full. He starts to think he got through it easily, but the old man interrupts with a cruel warning. The medicine is only beginning to work, and the old man tells him the real ordeal is to burn. It suddenly ignites inside the boy's chest as the medicine triggers a violent reaction in his body. The pain hits all at once, and he collapses into a scream. He realizes his whole body is burning from within, far beyond ordinary heat. His mana surges out of control, the agony swelling until it feels like a sun is writhing in his stomach and threatening to kill him. The old man remains unmoved and tells him to endure it. As the boy suffers beside the fire, the old man reflects that this oasis too will eventually be swallowed by quicksand and vanish. Even so, he notes that new sand anglers will be born there again, and life will return in another cycle. While the old man calmly muses on the cycle of life, the boy furiously begs him to stop philosophizing and help. Overwhelmed by pain, he finally drops all pride and pleads outright for the old man to save him. An old man glances back at the younger traveler, carrying the air of someone already used to his complaints. Their bickering is so constant that even a death threat from the younger man is met with the old man's demand for silence and sleep. The younger man wakes sprawled in the desert, disoriented and trying to understand where he is. The old man immediately confirms he is conscious by insulting him from upside down over his face. Startled awake, the younger man panics, and both of them accuse the other of being the one who caused the scare. As the old man mocks him for sleeping, the younger man insists he did not rest at all and merely blacked out. The old man pushes him to check his condition, and the younger man realizes something about his body has changed. What he feels is not weakness but a sudden, unnatural lightness. He discovers his body has become as light as sand, his muscles feel weightless, and mana is surging through him like a storm. As sand rises around him in response, he realizes he has grown dramatically stronger in an instant, and cannot explain how. The old man reveals the source of that change. He fed him the gallbladder of a sand angler. He explains that the organ is a rare desert medicine valued like a mana stone because it lets people endure the sun and sand. The younger man is stunned that such a precious resource was used on him, while the old man notes the treatment worked even better than expected. The old man dismisses the sacrifice as practical, making it clear he only strengthened the boy so he would stop being dead weight. The younger man eagerly vows to become useful, but the old man cuts him off and orders him to finish eating before they move on. Time passes beneath a brutal desert sky. After days of feeding on the angler, the old man notes there was far more meat than expected and that it sustained them for 4 days. With their supplies from the creature exhausted, he tells the younger man it is time to set out again. The younger man accepts that order with renewed confidence. He rushes forward enthusiastically, now energized by his new strength and purpose. They head deeper into a desert where the wind and sand never truly settle. The younger man moves through the storm with ease, testing how naturally his body now handles the environment. He realizes the sandstorm barely affects him at all, feeling more like a cool breeze thanks to his new ability. What unsettles him more is that the old man keeps walking through the same storm without rest or complaint. After days of silence and relentless marching, the younger man starts wondering whether the old man is mentally unraveling. As the trek drags on for 2 weeks without rest, he begins doubting whether the old man even knows where he is leading them. That complaint is interrupted when a giant desert insect suddenly lunges at him from the storm. He reacts without panic, brushing off the attack and treating the monster like an annoyance rather than a threat. Even while coughing and grumbling about the endless journey, he remains composed enough to assess the situation. A closer look makes him realize the creature is tougher than he first assumed. Seeing its durability, he decides simply passing by is no longer an option. He shifts into combat mode, judging that this encounter will require a real response. By sensing the area around him, he discovers the insect is not alone and that multiple hostile creatures have already surrounded him. He prepares an ability and calls for whatever is listening to answer immediately. Driven as much by fear of the old man's wrath as by survival, he commits to ending the fight quickly. The swarm closes in from all directions, trying to overwhelm him at once. He calmly acknowledges the response to his summons and invokes Blaster. A violent eruption of sand explodes outward, tearing through the battlefield. As the blast rages, he almost casually reflects that sandstorm days suit him perfectly because the entire desert becomes his weapon. When the attack subsides, he realizes the old man has vanished and angrily accuses him of abandoning him on purpose. He keeps ranting that the old man has no sense of comradeship and deserves to be alone, even as the monsters remain nearby. Mid-complaint, he suddenly wonders whether the old man might actually have heard every word. That thought sobers him at once, and he instinctively starts to apologize while his detection field stays active around him. Ordinarily his constant vigilance would let him respond instantly to any monster entering his range. This time, however, what he sensed was not a normal threat he could neatly counter. What entered his awareness felt less like a monster and more like sheer terror closing in. The true scale of the danger is revealed as a massive swarm of giant insects engulfs the area around him. Now genuinely shaken, he realizes the number of enemies is absurd and cannot understand where such an army came from. He desperately calls for the old man, finally grasping that this is far beyond a minor skirmish. The old man is revealed to be nearby after all, sitting calmly and watching with complete confidence while the younger man panics. The young man, still stung by being treated like a child, throws himself forward determined to prove he no longer needs the old man's protection. He realizes the old man's warning was right, the desert is infested with monstrous ants. And the old man's map was really a test to make him face this danger. Refusing to be intimidated, he convinces himself that no matter how many there are, insects are still beneath him. He charges through the swarm at full speed, trying to overwhelm the threat before it can surround him. That confidence falters when the pressure of the attack closes in faster than he expected. An ant suddenly intercepts him at close range, proving the swarm can match his movement. The insects pile onto him, and his bravado turns into furious frustration as he is dragged down by sheer numbers. Pinned and humiliated, he lashes out at the swarm for fighting him together instead of giving him a fair fight. Once he sees how completely he is surrounded, he finally understands he may have rushed into a disaster. A violent blast erupts in the middle of the swarm and blows the battlefield apart. Dust and sand swallow everything, briefly erasing both the ants and the young man from sight. He crashes hard, the impact tearing a cry out of him. Badly hurt and coughing blood, he struggles on the ground while the ants close in again. Even injured, he forces himself to stay conscious and look for a way out. Then he notices the old man calmly watching nearby, as if this beating was expected. Instead of despairing, the young man answers that sight with a defiant grin. He rises under the swarm's pressure and throws a challenge back at the old man, vowing to survive this trial. The old man approves, seeing that the boy's will has finally hardened. He explains that in this ruined world, the ability to escape danger could have let the boy live comfortably without ever striving for more. But the old man makes clear that such a life would have ended in stagnation. He condemns people who never question the world's cruelty, and who obsess over appearances instead of understanding that an awakener's true strength is power itself. If the boy truly wants strength and survival, the old man says, then surviving as a weakling is no longer enough. He must survive as an awakener. He turns the lesson into a brutal challenge, demanding that the boy prove he can endure this world to the very end. The challenge hangs over the battlefield like a sentence, making survival itself the test. To explain what that means, the old man invokes the ancient catastrophe that made the world so merciless. He recalls that a century ago the great tragedy began with a single burst of light that destroyed everything in an instant. The memory is not abstract to him. It is the unbearable sight of loved ones being torn apart before one's eyes. For those who lived through it, that moment never faded and became the permanent burden of survival. He says survival means carrying that pain forever while constantly walking the line between life and death. Yet he smiles, because that cruelty is exactly why weakness can no longer be tolerated. He tells the boy plainly that he cannot defeat a monster like this by remaining who he is now. The warning only feeds the boy's manic resolve, and he declares that the ants are the ones about to die. The swarm surges again, pressing in as if to test whether his confidence is real. He reveals his answer, a crude technique that compresses sand into a high-pressure projectile. He fires the first sand missile across the battlefield with explosive force. As the projectile tears through the ants, he explains that adding gravity, wind, and every bit of energy he can control multiplies its effect. The attack detonates around him in towering blasts, turning the desert itself into his weapon. Drunk on that power, he declares that this is the end for the swarm. He doubles down, insisting they should have killed him before he had the chance to grow stronger. The old man watches with amused approval, seeing the boy finally acting like someone awakening to real power. The young man stands amid several hovering sand missiles, breathing hard and clutching his injured arm as he prepares to continue. When the dust settles, the desert is left gouged with massive craters, showing just how destructive his awakening has become. A wounded young man erupts in rage, refusing to accept the situation closing in around him. He tries to call out and lash back at his enemies, but his outburst is cut short before he can act. The interruption shocks him, and he realizes something impossible is happening right beside him. A giant ant-like creature seizes him from behind without any warning or detectable presence. As blood spills, he rules out ordinary stealth and starts piecing together that the ants are using something far more dangerous. He concludes the creatures have poisoned him, blocking his mana flow and explaining why he has been unable to control his power. Even while being overpowered, he rages at the humiliation of being brought down by such a cheap method. The struggle turns violent as the creature slams into him and drives him deeper into danger. Barely conscious, he curses his situation as his resistance falters. When he comes to, he realizes he has been dragged into the ant's nest itself, surrounded by watching predators. Lying helpless on the ground, he hears strange cries nearby and turns his attention toward them. As the source of the noise is a cluster of ant larvae, the larvae crawl over his body while he remains too weak to push them away. One of them bites down on him, beginning to feed. He understands with cold clarity that his body will not respond and that he is about to be eaten alive. With death suddenly close, he searches desperately for any remaining option. For a moment, he wonders if this is simply where his life ends. The larvae keep shrieking and writhing around him, turning his final moments into chaos. He forces one hand into motion and smashes down despite the paralysis. The nearby ants react to the impact, alerted that their prey is still fighting. Dragging himself up through sheer spite, he laughs bitterly at how pathetic his end has become. That bitterness hardens into refusal as he decides he would rather die furious than submit quietly. He directs all of that hatred at the ants and commits to one last counterattack. A violent burst of force tears through the nest around him. The surrounding ants are thrown into confusion as the ground and walls erupt. The shockwave keeps spreading, smashing through the chamber. Rock and earth split apart under the sudden surge of power. The entire nest convulses around him as his release of strength spirals outward. In the aftermath, he realizes the poison is gone and his stamina and mana are overflowing because his rank has risen. He understands that he has evolved in the middle of the fight. Testing his restored body, he recognizes that his new rank has raised him far beyond the F-rank weakness he had before. But the improvement means little if it still cannot solve the real threat in front of him. When the massive ant boss emerges untouched, he sees that even his empowered attack failed to leave a mark. The monster answers by smashing through the chamber and hurling him away with overwhelming force. As he crashes and is battered by the terrain, he realizes the creature's raw strength is monstrous. The ant boss keeps advancing through the collapsing nest without slowing at all. Watching it come on uninjured and berserk, he accepts that a direct fight is hopeless. He admits to himself that he cannot win by trading blows. Since none of his attacks can damage the creature's shell, he shifts from brute force to strategy. He starts searching for a method to defeat armor that cannot be broken. His answer is to stop trying to pierce the shell and instead find a way to tear it off. Acting on that idea, he lunges in and grabs hold of the monster at close range. He commits fully to the plan, deciding to twist the armor apart with his bare hands. The ant boss resists violently, its body straining as the grapple turns into a contest of force. Then a blinding light ignites inside the creature, revealing a hidden power. The energy swells between them, distorting the space around the clash. Caught in the surge, he realizes too late that the monster has unleashed something far worse than brute strength. He identifies the attack as high-frequency vibration and understands it is about to destroy his brain if it continues. The vibrations expand outward in a crushing wave, threatening to overwhelm him completely. Even as he endures the assault, he is furious that the ant boss concealed such a lethal ability until the very end. The wounded young man steels himself and commits to a fight that will end only with one of them dead. He throws himself into the clash, ready to gamble his life against his enemies. The struggle turns into a reckless test of endurance as he refuses to back down. Even half by fury and half by desperation, he pushes forward with the resolve to keep fighting until someone falls. But the momentum breaks, and he is suddenly left suspended in darkness as his body gives out. He crashes down, bloodied and barely conscious, realizing the damage has caught up to him. Trying to move, he bitterly recognizes that his body can no longer support him. That realization hardens into a simple truth: he is too weak to continue on his own. An older man catches him and bluntly confirms what he already knows, though without contempt. The old man hauls him along and warns that collapsing here would only get him killed. The younger man answers with a crooked grin, recognizing the old man as the one now keeping him alive. The old man laughs at his attitude but admits the brat has at least proven useful. Pointing to the dead Ant Queen, he explains that even though she was weaker than a true rancor, surviving her and refusing to surrender has earned the boy a chance to live. Still dazed and half-deaf, the boy jokes that he can barely hear any of this because his eardrums are ruined. The old man takes that in stride and keeps dragging him onward. Unable to follow what is happening, the boy can only ask where he is being taken. The old man brings him to a glowing object lying amid the wreckage of the battle. The boy stares at the strange urban confusion, unsure what new absurdity he is facing. He turns to the old man for an explanation, hoping this at least makes sense. Instead, the old man matter-of-factly identifies it as a queen ant egg and tells him to eat it, even calling it medicine. The boy is stunned that the old man expects him to swallow something so alien and grotesque. Looking at the glowing egg up close, he doubts it is even edible. Since he still cannot hear properly, he tries to confirm whether this so-called cure will kill him. The old man casually answers that it probably will, but the warning never truly reaches him. Too battered to think clearly and choosing trust over caution, the boy decides to eat it anyway. He swallows the egg despite not understanding anything except that the old man called it medicine. For one brief moment, he is delighted because it tastes unexpectedly good. That relief instantly turns to alarm as something inside him begins to change. Pain erupts through his body, and he realizes too late that this was no harmless remedy. His insides begin twisting violently, the lethal effect known as huanzheng taking hold. The queen ant egg proves to be a deadly poison that forces the body's organs into savage distortion. Thorn-like growths tear through him from within, turning the poison into a slow, brutal execution. In agony, he screams at the old man to explain what he has just been made to consume. The old man only complains about the noise and coldly remarks that surviving this world means getting used to horrors like this. The boy cannot accept that answer, but his outrage is already being drowned by the poison. He collapses into violent coughing as the damage inside him worsens. Blood pours from his mouth and hands while he stares at his own failing body in shock. Certain he has been betrayed, he bitterly thinks that even after a life this miserable, trusting someone was still his final mistake. As death seems close, he condemns himself as a fool for believing in the old man. His body gives way completely, leaving him sprawled on the cavern floor while the old man moves on. Unbothered by the boy's suffering, the old man turns his attention to the ant corpse and starts inspecting the spoils. He forcefully breaks into the monster's body with practiced efficiency. Digging deeper, he searches through the remains for something valuable. He finally tears out the prize hidden inside the ant. Examining the crystal he extracted, he notes that a true monster's mana crystal is far superior to the artificial kind and judges this one a major windfall. Deciding the ant is worth harvesting, he claims everything from the corpse for himself. With his loot secured, he lifts his weapon and prepares to leave. Before going, he addresses the dying boy with a trace of familiarity, almost as if speaking to an old companion. Yet he immediately hardens again, telling himself that weakness simply leads to death and that this boy's fate is no exception. He walks away into the cavern, leaving the poisoned boy behind to live or die alone. A white-haired old man presses the issue in silence, making it clear they both already understand the danger. He states the real problem outright: they are running out of time. The tense pause hangs over the cavern as the younger one stirs back to awareness. The old man greets him with rough relief, insulting him even as he confirms he is finally awake. The younger man answers with a violent burst of power that tears through the ground. Unimpressed, the old man treats the attack like childish disrespect and complains more about the dust and the threat. His calm amusement shows he still does not take the outburst seriously. The younger man commits fully, unleashing a swarm of massive earthen spikes to crush him. Even while facing the assault, the old man dismisses the attack as foolish sincerity. He continues to regard the younger man's rage as stupidity rather than danger. The spikes close in from every side, but the old man remains composed at the center. The attack slams down around him, and in the middle of it the younger man demands to know why he was targeted. His accusation sharpens into a desperate question about why the old man tried to kill him. The demand becomes pure anguish as he struggles to understand the betrayal. Driven by hurt and fury, he swears he will never forgive the old man. He reinforces the attack, driving sharpened stone deeper in an effort to finish it. The crushing force continues, meant to leave no chance of survival. The cavern wall erupts under the impact as he pours more power into the assault. Breathing hard, he holds his stance, convinced he has forced an answer out of the old man. Instead, the old man cuts through his accusation and scolds him for losing himself in panic. Emerging untouched from the wreckage, he mocks the younger man's damaged judgment and tells him to think. The younger man is shaken to realize the full-force attack did nothing at all. The old man points out the obvious flaw: someone that weak would be easy to kill directly, so poisoning him for murder would make no sense. That blunt logic punctures the younger man's certainty, and he hesitantly admits it. The old man explains that the queen ant's egg can either destroy a body from within or purge its hidden impurities, making it either poison or medicine depending on the person. He adds that once those impurities are removed, mana floods the emptied space, and reminds the younger man he should have felt that change during the attack. The younger man recognizes the truth as overwhelming power now courses through him far beyond his former limits. Stunned, he can only stare at the old man in disbelief. His hostility collapses into frantic gratitude, and he throws himself at the old man in apology. The old man immediately rejects the emotional display, while the younger man complains through tears and realizes the treatment even healed him. Still grinning, the old man calls him a dumbass again and tells the grown man to stop crying and let go. But beneath the teasing, he quietly acknowledges him as a friend. He reflects that the younger man truly could have died and only survived because he was strong enough to endure. Privately, he admits he gambled recklessly because the boy needed power quickly and would be worthless otherwise. He brushes past the apology, tells the younger man not to forgive him, and urges him to move. The younger man, still being hauled along, is baffled that the old man is holding on to him again. The old man's grin makes it clear he already has an answer the younger man will not like. He reminds him they have no time and says they need to hurry out of there. The younger man instantly realizes this means the old man is about to drag him along in the worst possible way. Outside in the desert, small creatures pick over remains an uneasy calm. That calm is shattered when something erupts violently up from beneath the sand. The pair burst out into the open, the old man laughing at the rough escape while the younger man suffers through being carried. Once outside, the old man berates him for sleeping for 4 whole days. He keeps mocking the younger man's weakness until something in the distance catches his attention. The younger man, now wary enough to expect anything, asks what could have surprised him. A sudden jolt of alarm tells him the answer is far worse than he expected. In the distance, an enormous turtle-like monster appears, so huge that its scale feels absurd even from far away. The younger man cannot comprehend how a creature that massive could exist when it is still nearly 30 kilometers away. As they move across the desert, the old man identifies it as Archelon, a mobile fortress that gives them no chance to rest. He explains that Archelon is a turtle-type monster rank B, but its defensive power exceeds even many a ranks, and people even modify its shell to use it as a ride. The young man is forced to confront how vast and dangerous the world really is when his older companion points out a monstrous beast and the kind of creature powerful enough to ride it. The lesson is driven into him as he stares upward in shock, realizing his small experience has told him almost nothing about the scale of the world. The older man insists he understand that beings exist who can command horrors like this, widening the boy's sense of what he is up against. That warning becomes immediate when an enormous creature looms over them, making the threat impossible to dismiss. Before the tension can settle, someone drops down from above with enough force to shake the ground. The newcomer lands between them in a violent impact, abruptly turning the encounter into something personal. The older warrior recognizes the arrival at once and confirms that the figure in front of him is someone from his past, while keeping the boy from interfering. With a long, familiar look, he acknowledges that this reunion has been a long time coming. The newcomer reveals himself as Diadon, an elderly man who clearly knows the warrior well. Pavilsa answers with mocking affection, greeting Diadon like an old rival and immediately slipping into insults. Diadon fires back that Pavilsa is the real abnormality for still being so vigorous at his age. Once the greetings are out of the way, Diadon questions why Pavilsa has entered territory that is not his, and Pavilsa claims he is only there because scavengers have become a nuisance. The boy joins the exchange by accusing Deodan of fleeing from scavengers, only to be met with the old man's claim that caution is wisdom, not cowardice. Watching two centenarians trade strength and confidence, the boy is left reeling at how absurdly powerful they still are. Deodan cuts off the pointless bickering as a massive creature stirs nearby, reminding everyone that the surroundings are still dangerous. The three of them pause in a tense triangle beneath the shadow of the giant threat overhead. The boy can only marvel at the scale of what these old men treat as ordinary. As the colossal beast shifts above them, Deodan decides to move on and leads them away. The boy shrinks into himself and follows cautiously, trying not to draw any attention. When he finds himself near the giant creature's eye, he realizes silence is his best chance of staying alive. Deodan notices the unfamiliar face and immediately suspects the boy is one of Pavilsa's underlings. Pavilsa casually claims he merely picked up some trash, reducing the boy to a nuisance he happened to carry alone. Deodan is amused that a man like Pavilsa is dragging someone around at all, as if the pairing itself is unnatural. To him, that alone is proof that the world has gone strange. When they arrive inside a hidden settlement, the boy is stunned by the existence of such a place. Seeing a city built within a vast cavern, he realizes he has stepped into an entirely unknown world. Pavilsa explains that this place belongs to the Moat clan, and the boy tries to understand whether that means an actual bloodline. He learns the clan descends from Pavilsa, though Pavilsa dismisses them as fools who only survive because Archilon still supports them. Deodan bristles at Pavilsa insulting his clan so freely. Pavilsa presses the insult further, declaring that once Deodan dies, Archilon will abandon the clan and leave them finished. Deodan refuses to argue the point in public and postpones that discussion for later. The scene shifts indoors with a hard, deliberate step, signaling a move from reunion to business. In a private chamber, Deodan invites Pavilsa to show what he has brought, and Pavilsa agrees without ceremony. Pavilsa opens a swirling subspace storage, revealing that he carries his haul in a magical void. A heap of treasure and monster materials spills out, turning the room into a display of wealth and slaughter. The boy is horrified by the sheer volume, and Pavilsa coldly implies that more lives will soon be added to that count. Still trying to make sense of him, the boy asks whether Pavilsa is some kind of magic user to be pulling goods from nowhere. Deodan is exasperated that the boy does not even know what subspace is, and realizes he has been hauling around someone embarrassingly ignorant. The boy snaps back in frustration and demands a straight answer instead of more ridicule. Inspecting one of the items, Deodan admits that every piece is flawless and of the highest quality. Pavilsa cuts through the praise and demands to know what price Deodan will offer. Deodan jokes about paying in mana crystals, and Pavilsa's immediate hostility makes him retreat and clarify that he was only teasing. Once Deodan notes that Pavilsa has little use for mana crystals anyway, he asks what payment he actually wants. Pavilsa names two demands, a breastplate made from the corpse of the wolf ant queen and a subspace item. He lets the second request hang, making clear that both are non-negotiable. The boy, now understanding the term, recognizes that Pavilsa specifically wants another subspace item. Deodan questions why Pavilsa would need armor or more storage when he already seems to have plenty of both. Pavilsa answers by grabbing the boy and making it clear the request is not for himself. He bluntly declares that the boy is the one who will use them, exposing that he has some larger plan for the reluctant youth. For the first time, Deodan reacts with genuine interest, suddenly seeing the boy in a very different light. Watching the boy, the older man concludes that anyone Deodan bothers to protect must be unusually valuable. A woman named Kaylee suddenly bursts in, drawing everyone's attention. The heavy door opens, announcing her arrival into the room. The boy and the old man turn toward the interruption to see who has come. The boy is immediately struck by her presence. Kaylee arrives ready for work and asks whether she was summoned. She recognizes one of the elders as her grandfather, while the boy is distracted by how attractive she is. Her grandfather skips pleasantries and asks whether she still has the subspace bracelet she once made. Kaylee explains that she no longer has the bracelet, but she kept a gauntlet whose enchantment turned out so well that she stored it safely. The elder orders her to hand that gauntlet to the boy, and she is outraged that he would give away something so precious. The other old man realizes that the timid girl from before has become an enchanter, while Kaylee notices the boy staring at her and grows awkward. The elder praises her, noting that enchanters are rare even in Neo's soul and that, as Pavis' granddaughter, she has gained a remarkably useful talent. Kaylee accepts the praise shyly, still unsettled by the boy's attention. Her grandfather dismisses her and tells her to have Noel make a breastplate, implying the outfit she is wearing is hardly proper armor. She obeys, then brusquely orders the boy to follow so she can deliver the gauntlet, while he eagerly falls in behind her. The two old men watch them leave, amused by the situation. Kaylee leads the boy out into the city streets toward her workshop. On the way, she asks what connection he has to the terrifying old man. The boy says there is no real bond at all and that he merely ran into the old geezer by chance and got dragged along. Kaylee is stunned that anyone could meet that monster by accident and survive being kept around by him. The boy realizes her hostility comes from the same kind of trauma he feels around that he imagines the elder as a bloodthirsty beast, confirming in his mind just how deeply Kaylee has been scarred by him. He privately sums it up as straightforward PTSD. Kaylee warns him to stay careful because that elder may look human, but she considers him a monster underneath, and the boy silently agrees. They stop at a sealed entrance, and Kaylee presents it with a craftsman's pride. When he asks if this is the place, she excitedly confirms that it is her workshop. She tells him to brace himself because he is about to see something beyond anything he has experienced before. The boy is overwhelmed before he can even finish reacting. Inside, he realizes the room is packed with equipment and crafted items, and Kaylee proudly explains that nearly everything there is her own work, with the custom-made pieces being her masterpieces. She enthusiastically singles out the gauntlet, boasting about its rare materials and its exceptional repair function. The boy quickly grasps the key point and asks if that means it can restore itself. Kaylee confirms it and adds that it can also accept a fire attribute, turning the wearer into something monstrously powerful depending on the inserted item. Awed by the value of what he is being offered, the boy hesitates and asks whether he is really allowed to take it. Kaylee says she is only following her grandfather's order, but warns that once an item is inserted into the gauntlet it cannot be removed, which only makes him more eager to accept. As they both take hold of the gauntlet, the boy catches on that she is reluctant to let go. The handoff turns into a tug of war as either side truly releases it. The struggle escalates into a full, ridiculous battle over possession of the gauntlet. The boy throws himself into the fight, insisting he cannot abandon this precious treasure to someone else, and wondering why greed has taken over him so completely. He finally wrenches it free and triumphantly claims it as his, joking as if he has stolen away a beloved child she raised. Their petty fight is abruptly interrupted by a violent cry echoing through the building. Kaylee freezes, shaken by the sound, while the boy realizes giving the gauntlet back is not the issue anymore. She recognizes the scream as coming from Archelon, and immediately understands who must have arrived. The boy demands to know who she means as the tension spikes. Kaylee braces herself, already dreading the answer she has reached. Back inside, the two elders remain calm, as if this disturbance is familiar rather than alarming. One of them remarks with weary annoyance that the intruders are persistent. Outside, a violent clash reveals that scavengers have launched another attack. Kaylee grabs the boy and runs, confirming that the attackers are indeed scavengers. As they flee, she explains that the scavengers are a notorious group whose influence has been growing rapidly, and the boy presses to know what kind of people they are. She identifies them as the Black Shark Clan, a gang of awakened criminals led by a lunatic and filled with vicious members who abuse their powers. A woman realizes the raiders are not ordinary thieves but killers who will slaughter anyone in their way. As she and a young man force open a heavy door, he struggles to understand why their attackers would still be dangerous even while drunk. The woman bursts inside in panic, urgently calling for her grandfather. They find the old men already aware of the attack, with one of them calm despite the danger closing in. When she proposes moving Archelon to safety, the elder ones that escape is already impossible because the enemy will reach them too soon. Instead of fleeing, he decides this is the moment to make a stand and fight. The woman immediately offers to gather the defenders, but he cuts her off before she can act. The old warrior rises and declares that the elders themselves will handle the threat. The woman is left stunned as he prepares to move personally. He barks at the young man and singles him out, ignoring the others. The boy is startled when the veteran assigns the coming fight to him. The old warrior reminds him that he already profited from this place, so now he must repay that debt by protecting it despite being outclassed. Though shaken by the impossible demand, the boy refuses to back down just because the enemy is stronger. The veteran presses him further, forcing him to confront whether fear will control him. That challenge hits the boy hard and leaves him momentarily speechless. His mind shifts into a tense inner space as he begins searching for a way to survive what is coming. He curses himself for nearly falling for the old man's provocation. Recognizing the taunt for what it was, he admits the veteran manipulated him expertly and regains some composure. He forces himself to calm down, knowing he has only a short window before the enemy breaks through. Closing his eyes, he concentrates on finding an answer instead of panicking. He estimates the attackers will need about 5 minutes to carve their way in, giving him almost no time to prepare. He focuses on his transformed hand as if searching his own power for a clue. His thoughts narrow to a single problem: how someone like him can defeat an awakener above his rank. The gap in rank terrifies him, but he keeps pushing for a solution. Outside, the bearded elder worries that leaving the boy alone against such an opponent may be reckless. He voices his concern plainly, pointing out that the boy is only E rank. The old warrior answers coldly that if the boy loses, he dies, and that is simply the reality of the test. The elder criticizes that harshness, but he also acknowledges that even a promising cub can be killed before it matures. Still, he leaves room for hope, suggesting that everything changes if the cub can show its fangs. He then shouts down to the boy, making sure the lesson reaches him. The elder urges him to remember one crucial truth before the enemy arrives. The boy braces himself to listen, clenching down on his fear. At that moment, the pursuing bandits finally catch up and report to their captain, eager to start killing. Their captain, a bandaged man, prepares to unleash his spell on the defenders. Before he can act, he is interrupted by a sudden refusal from someone hidden nearby. The woman from inside the mansion launches herself into the fray, charging the raiders head-on. The bandits answer her attack with savage enthusiasm, rallying under the name of the Black Shark clan. As the fight erupts around the giant sand creature, the raiders treat the slaughter like a celebration. One of the mounts slams down into the sand, triggering a violent shift in the ground. A cloaked fighter dives through the chaos as the unstable sand starts swallowing the battlefield. The collapse spreads beneath the raiders and drags men and beasts downward. The bandit captain is caught off guard and realizes too late that the ground itself is turning against them. Panic breaks out as the raiders see the sand splitting apart and begin shouting for retreat. The battlefield tears open further, forcing the attackers to scatter. The captain and the woman both realize this was no ordinary stumble but a deliberate disturbance in the sand. The captain suspects a trap, but the woman insists they never prepared one, meaning someone else caused it. Before she can finish the thought, a hidden assailant seizes her from behind. She is shocked by how suddenly he appeared at her back. The bandit captain furiously orders the attacker to release her at once. Instead, the hidden fighter strikes her with brutal force, turning the confusion into a direct and personal clash. A bandaged, hooded fighter stares ahead in shock, realizing the battle has turned into something he did not expect. He braces himself and reaches for his weapon, trying to recover control before his opponent can press the advantage. A body is suddenly torn through by a violent strike, showing how brutally fast and lethal this fight has become. The young swordsman coldly dismisses the fallen foe and immediately demands the next attacker. Another hooded assassin lunges from behind him, but the young man remains calm as the ambush closes in. The attacker rushes past in a blur, unleashing a slash meant to cut the young swordsman down in one motion. Instead, the attack crashes uselessly through the sand as red force tears across the battlefield. The assassin is rattled, unable to understand why his target keeps slipping past his killing blows. He realizes with growing alarm that the young swordsman did not merely evade the strike but somehow stopped it. An ally warns Mashimoto that the enemy is attacking from below, exposing the hidden angle of the assault. The assassin commits to that underground strike, bursting upward to catch his target off guard. He drives his blade up through the sand with full force, convinced he has finally cornered the boy. When it fails again, he erupts in fury and accuses his opponent of relying on cheap tricks. His attack detonates into a cloud of sand instead of flesh, proving the battlefield itself is being manipulated against him. Now forced to acknowledge it, he realizes the sand is interfering with every attempt to land a clean hit. Humiliated, he rages that all these petty deceptions cannot possibly be enough to stop him. He is shown doubt by surging forward with brute force, trying to overwhelm the trickery with raw power. Someone identifies the technique as a pincer attack and warns Mashimoto that the young swordsman is controlling something in the sand. Before the warning can help, the young swordsman strikes first and smashes one of the attackers aside. He stands over the exchange with a blank, almost inhuman calm, showing no strain despite the pressure around him. A memory surfaces of an older mentor urgently telling him to remember one crucial truth in battles like this. The lesson is that hesitation comes from seeing the enemy as human, even when facing a deranked threat. The mentor clarifies that some enemies only wear human form and should never be judged by ordinary standards. The younger self questions that claim, struggling to accept such a harsh distinction. The answer is merciless. Those men delight in killing and tormenting people for no reason at all. The mentor drives the point deeper by listing atrocities against women and children, insisting monsters like that have abandoned any claim to humanity. Back in the present, the young swordsman plants his foot in blood, grounding himself in that lesson and in the reality of what these killers are. He concludes that beings who revel in such cruelty cannot be called human. The bandaged assassin explodes with rage at that judgment and charges again wrapped in violent red energy. His fury sharpens into pure hatred as he throws himself at the young swordsman with murderous intent. The young swordsman answers by raising a ring of sand spikes around him, forcing the attacker into a deadly trap. Even while being boxed in, the assassin snarls that his opponent is still relying on cheap tricks to the bitter end. He refuses to believe someone using such methods could truly defeat him and reaches out as if to tear through the trap by force. He promises a slow, monstrous death, vowing to mutilate the boy and feed him piece by piece to beasts. The threat grows even crueler, as he imagines making him listen to his family scream before begging for mercy. The young swordsman cuts through the rant with a flat question, asking if those are really his final words. That calm contempt unsettles the assassin for the first time, breaking his momentum. An older white-haired man watches with a pleased, knowing grin, as if recognizing what the boy has become. The young swordsman tightens his grip on his sword and fixes the assassin with open disdain. He reduces the man to exactly what he believes he is, worthless trash. The assassin laughs bitterly from the ground, trying to answer the insult with scorn of his own. But the scene shifts to a dead white-haired figure named Clay, revealing one of the acknowledged fighters who has already fallen. Another fallen body is identified as Mashimoto, confirming that both recognized combatants have been taken out. The surviving assassin cannot accept it, insisting that men he respected should never have been beaten by an amateur. As sand rises around the young swordsman like a living wall, the assassin finally grasps that he is facing an ability beyond his understanding. He watches a vortex of sand twist through the battlefield and wonders what kind of power could create such control. Choosing force over caution, he gathers red energy into his fists and prepares to break through head-on. He rejects any more games and demands that the boy stop hiding his true power in the sand. The young swordsman bursts forward through the moving sand, and the assassin challenges him to prove himself as a true awakener. With the sand spikes closing in around him, the assassin roars for a direct confrontation, desperate to drag the hidden power into the open. The battle opens with a violent surge of red force crashing into the sand as the masked fighter drives his attack forward. Believing he has cornered his opponent, he presses harder and demands to know what comes next. A sudden shift makes him realize something is wrong before he can finish the blow. His target is gone, leaving only a blasted cloud of sand and debris behind. He searches for the vanished enemy, but the answer comes from his blind side. The younger fighter strikes from behind with a hidden attack, shattering through the masked man's defense. For an instant the younger man thinks he has outread his opponent, then realizes he has actually stepped into a trap. The masked fighter reveals that luring him close was the whole point, because now the younger man is within his killing range. As the trap closes, the younger fighter understands too late that he was baited in. Pinned at close quarters, he curses himself for underestimating how easily a non-martial opponent could force this distance. The masked fighter seizes control of the exchange, and warns that one mistake in battle is enough to decide death. He tightens the punishment, and the younger man realizes this was never a feint but an execution attempt. Driven by vengeance, the masked fighter vows to repay every death one by one, beginning with Mashimoto. He unleashes that hatred in a direct crushing strike. A red shockwave blooms outward as the attack detonates around them. The impact tears into the ground with explosive force. Still attacking, the masked fighter dedicates the blow to more of the dead, naming Clay, Elia, and Ezreal. He continues the litany through Miraz, Chaveria, and Kale while driving the younger man deeper into pain. Convinced victory is certain, he declares that whatever power his enemy has no longer matters once he has been caught. He condemns the younger man to die cursing his own weakness. But as he moves to finish it, the younger fighter slips free of the hold. The masked fighter is stunned that his prey escaped despite being firmly trapped. The younger man retreats through swirling sand, creating distance in a single desperate motion. The masked fighter realizes the escape came at a cost. The younger man discarded his gauntlet to get away. Enraged, he lunges after him rather than letting him reset the fight. The chase resumes across the sand as attacks and fragments whip through the air between them. The masked fighter blames himself for panicking and letting the younger man break free. Even so, he notices the younger man's latest strike is weaker and concludes the lost gauntlet reduced his power. Watching the diminished momentum, he reasons that the gauntlet must have been amplifying the force behind those attacks. He refines the theory further, deciding the younger man is a wind attribute mage who had been using sand as a medium to add physical impact. Certain he has solved the trick, he commits to a direct counterattack. He charges in confidently, declaring that he has completely figured out the younger man's methods. He insists that without the gauntlet, the same level of power is no longer possible. From that assumption, he concludes a mere magic type without an amplifier cannot beat a martial fighter in close combat. The younger man sees the opening created by that arrogance. His intent hardens into a decisive counter. A sand-forged spike erupts into the masked fighter's back, piercing him from behind. The masked fighter reels in shock as he realizes the younger man deliberately targeted his back. Looking hard, the younger man reveals he had been waiting for the older fighter to finally lower his guard. The masked fighter recognizes the tactic with fury, accusing him of using the same trick against him. Then a worse realization hits him. This should have been impossible without the gauntlet. He struggles to understand how a mage of another attribute could drive so much force through sand unaided. The contradiction breaks his certainty, because such output without an amplifying item should not exist. As more sand attacks close in, he begins to fear he has misjudged not just the technique but the nature of the power itself. His denial falters as the truth becomes harder to reject. He finally frames the possibility in his mind, a power that directly manipulates sand. That thought escalates into something even more terrifying, a force that seems to command the world's matter itself. Overwhelmed, he can barely believe such an ability could truly exist. Before he can recover, the sand rises around him again like a living weapon. Elsewhere, an old white-haired man reacts in alarm, repeating the impossible conclusion. Someone can manipulate sand. An elder realizes the young fighter's strange power may be overwhelming enough to make him both the world's weapon and shield, and is stunned that such a thing is real. He judges that the boy survived only because he avoided a direct clash with Gawain, a seasoned scavenger who would have killed him head-on. Instead, the boy used the erratic nature of his ability to bait his opponent into lowering his guard while he waited for a single opening. The elder is even more impressed because that level of judgment should require years of experience, yet the boy grasped it instinctively in the middle of battle. Bloodied and kneeling in the sand, the boy shows just how hard-won that instinctive victory was. The old man admits to himself that he badly underestimated him, mistaking a true predator for something harmless. That realization leaves the elder quietly reassessing the boy's worth. Calling out to Diadon, he asks where he found someone this monstrous. The boy struggles back to his feet through the dust, still barely holding himself together. He recognizes how narrowly he escaped death and knows one clean hit would have ended him. Even so, he half jokes that surviving something like that ought to earn him some praise from the old man. Before any answer comes, the ground violently shifts around him. A massive trench tears through the desert, abruptly changing the battlefield and cutting the distance between them. The boy turns in confusion, trying to understand what just happened. From across the newly split ground, the elder coldly declares him the winner while accusing him of trying to leave after doing only half the job. The boy protests in panic, demanding to know what mistake he made this time. The elder's anger makes it clear this is not a joke or a test of manners. He answers that the boy's failure was sparing an enemy who should never have been left alive. He reveals that the swordsman the boy let go had already been preparing to ambush him. Driving the lesson home, he condemns the boy for not anticipating such an obvious betrayal. The accusation lands, and the boy begins to realize exactly who the elder means. The old man presses harder, asking how long he intends to remain so dangerously naive. Then he turns away and tells the boy to leave. He warns that with such a soft mindset, the boy will die soon anyway. Dao Den watches in silence, letting the harsh judgment stand. A young woman nearby also listens, concerned by how deeply the words are cutting. The weapon at hand underscores the deadly reality behind the elder's criticism. The boy accepts the dismissal without resistance, still absorbing the rebuke. The desert falls quiet as the confrontation ends. He remains turned away, thinking instead of arguing. At last he offers a simple thanks, taking the old man's cruelty as a form of warning. Dao Den and the young woman approach and explain that the people of Archion are non-combatants, with no talent for fighting. They add that even their scavengers are merely blacksmiths using tools as weapons, and without his intervention many of them would have died. The old man himself finally gives the boy sincere credit, and thanks him for what he accomplished. The praise leaves the boy quiet, unsure how to respond. The young woman breaks the tension by enthusiastically celebrating him for taking on the entire Black Shark squad alone. She tells him not to let the old man's harshness get to him, explaining that his standards have always been absurdly high. But the boy rejects that easy comfort, because he knows the old man's criticism was deserved. He admits he knew the spared swordsman, Mashimoto, might survive and come back to ambush him, yet he still chose not to kill him. He confesses that he lied to himself, pretending the threat might simply disappear on its own. Remembering the enemy's cruelty, he admits he understood they were evil all along. Even after deciding they deserved death, he still could not carry that decision through. He realizes the truth was not mercy but fear, because he lacked the courage to face killing and death directly. What he really wanted was to avoid the burden of taking a life, and he now sees that as cowardice. Accepting the lesson, he concludes that the old man was right about him. He imagines the elder has watched countless people like him die because they hesitated in exactly this way. From that, he understands the old man's harshness as an attempt to keep him from becoming another corpse. With a faint smile, he says Dao Den is simply terrible at showing concern. The woman and Dao Den are both caught off guard by that unexpectedly generous interpretation. She jokes that hearing anyone describe Dao Den that way is so strange that the boy must have hit his head. The old man reflects that hesitation in a fight to the death is a burden no child should have been forced to carry. Watching the shaken boy, the adults realize he is trying to act normal even though the killing clearly weighs on him. The elder admits he is relieved rather than disappointed, because the boy's pain means he has not become numb to what happened. The moment is set aside as the boy is ordered to eat and wash up, and he obediently withdraws. Later, the old man sits alone reading in silence, but he senses the boy lingering nearby. Even from across the room, he waits out the boy's indecision instead of calling him in gently. When the boy finally appears, the elder scolds him for hovering at the door instead of entering properly. The boy announces he is going home, and the elder immediately hears it as a retreat born from fear. Numb by that judgment, the boy insists he is not so fragile that one killing can break him, yet as he tries to sound confident, his uncertainty betrays that he came seeking the old man's response. The elder cuts through the bravado by pointing out that the boy's trembling hands tell the truth. He explains that such shaking is normal, because taking a life should never leave a person untouched. He makes clear that killing always means ending a human life, and that weight follows the killer long after the moment passes. Rather than urging him to forget, the elder warns him not to deaden himself to the guilt. If the boy ever stops feeling remorse entirely, he will become no better than the man he killed. The elder tells him to remember that his suffering is proof he is still human. Even so, he gives the boy a choice to walk away now if this path is too much to bear. The boy rejects that escape at once and doubles down on his refusal to be broken. He claims he can manage himself, and tells the old man to stop worrying. Then he turns the moment into a joke, saying he cannot leave such a stubborn old man to die alone. That insolence finally softens the elder's sternness. He answers with amused affection, accepting the boy's defiance for what it really is, a decision to stay. The boy keeps teasing, convinced the old man enjoys having him around more than he admits. The elder responds physically instead of verbally, cutting off the chatter with sudden force. His strike lands hard enough to smash the floor and send the boy screaming. The scene shifts to a forge where numerous master blacksmiths labor together over an extraordinary blade. Specialists work with painstaking precision, treating the weapon less like metalwork and more like a dangerous ritual. The sword releases a violent surge of power, proving the forging process is still unstable even after days of effort. Seeing the gathered craftsmen, Kaylee is stunned by how many elites have been called in for this one task. The old man explains that such manpower is only natural because they are trying to calm Daeden's sword. Kaylee cannot understand how a single weapon could still be pouring out this much power after several days. The elder identifies the sword as Cryon and says only that it is a masterpiece born from one man's obsession. Kaylee struggles to accept that any human could have created something so overwhelming. The explanation grows darker. The blade is layered with countless enchantments and contains the cores and souls of millions of monsters. To dismiss handling it, the sword no longer feels like an object at all but like a living being. When Kaylee asks who could forge such a thing, the answer is simple, a human named Cryon. She wonders if the sword and its maker sharing a name means something, and the elder brushes it off as fitting for a work of that caliber. Before she can press further, he abruptly calls her by name and changes the subject. He tells her they can discuss it later because two people are about to leave. She explains that Dao Den never stays in one place for long, so Zion is likely already preparing to move on with him. Back in the room, Daeden's sudden claim that this is all for education is met with disbelief. He dismisses the protest and insists his harsh methods have a purpose. That purpose becomes clear in a flashback as Zion and Dao Den are chased by a group of elves. Zion realizes with alarm that their pursuers are not monsters but elves. The elves spot Zion and immediately decide a human would make useful bait for whatever threat is nearby. Considering that, Zion is horrified to learn they intend to sacrifice him to save themselves. As he suffers through the situation, he bitterly concludes that Kaylee is far more decent than these supposedly noble elves. Before he can process it further, the elves close in and surround him and Dao Den. One of the elves orders Zion off the rock at sword point, treating him as expendable. Another demands he jump down and lure the monster away immediately, making plain that his life means nothing to them. A band of armed elves abruptly halts and turns to face something behind them instead of continuing their escape. A young man trailing them nervously points out that they are faster than he is and questions why they stopped for his sake. Before he can finish, a crushing presence hits him so hard that his thoughts freeze. At first, he mistakes that pressure for the arrival of some unseen monster. The elf's own panic confirms that whatever has appeared terrifies them just as much. But as he searches for the source, he realizes this fear is unlike anything caused by the monsters and awakened beings he has faced before. Even the surrounding threats feel secondary beside the overwhelming force now dominating the scene. The force reveals itself as a lone human man standing amid the chaos, crackling with power. The young man understands that his body is reacting with raw survival instinct rather than reason. Driven by terror, he instinctively looks for the origin of that killing intent. To his own confusion, his eyes turn not toward the armed elves or the approaching beast but toward the companion beside him. He cannot understand why his attention and fear are being dragged toward that companion instead of the obvious dangers. He also realizes he is too paralyzed to flee, as if resisting would be meaningless. It quickly becomes clear that the terrifying presence belongs to the old human standing right next to them. The old man's face alone makes him seem less human than any monster nearby. One of the elves can barely comprehend what she is seeing. She cannot accept that such a being could exist in human form. Forcing herself to think clearly, she reminds herself that he is still only a human. When she sees her comrades instinctively kneeling before him, her disbelief turns to outrage. She rejects their submission and insists the only answer is to kill him. She launches an attack, declaring that a human like this should not exist at all. The young man can only stare in shock at how recklessly she is provoking the old man. The old man answers with effortless force, moving before anyone can react. His power slams down like a vertical strike that tears through the ground. He closes the distance instantly and seizes the attacking elf without strain. Another elf screams for Sabilan and Naoka to get up and move before they all die. Trying to recover command, she orders the others into formation and insists they only need to kill this one human. Her confidence collapses the moment the old man grabs her by the throat. Seeing her as Jahora, he reveals that he thought he had exterminated all of her kind decades ago and demands to know where they had been hiding. The remaining elves rage at the insult of seeing one of their own manhandled by a human and demand Jahora's release. Ignoring their threats, the old man calmly repeats his question. He presses the surviving elves as well, demanding to know how all of them escaped his earlier purge. His fury sharpens as he asks what they killed this time in order to stay alive. To him, their survival itself is proof that more innocent lives must have been sacrificed. The other elves can only stare, stunned by the accusation and the hatred behind it. Jahora, choking in his grip, desperately asks why he chose to kill her instead of the humans around them. His answer comes as another devastating strike that shatters the ground beneath them. As the elves are thrown into the air with the debris, Jahora's own words about human lives being worthless echo back at her. The old man throws the elves' contempt for humans in their faces and blames them for the ruin of the world. He declares that this broken world exists because of people like them. The young man, battered and confused, cannot make sense of what the old man is talking about. He begins to wonder whether the world's collapse truly has something to do with demi-humans. Below them, the monster that had been pursuing the elves rises through the dust and fire. The elves immediately recognize the beast and decide to use it instead of fighting both enemies themselves. They order the monster and the old man to be turned against each other. Seeing the young man as expendable, they command that he be thrown to the monster first. At the same time, they plan to corner the old man responsible for killing Jahora. One elf hesitates, suddenly unsettled by the idea that the young man is being treated as the real target. Her doubt is cut short when she is split cleanly in half. The old man's blade carves through both elf and monster in the same merciless motion. Sabilon screams for the fallen elf while the others call out in panic. Even while strangling another elf, the old man politely asks whether her village is nearby. He is no longer asking about survival alone but about where the rest of her people are. Terrified beyond speech, she can only tremble as he promises to release her if she answers. When she still resists, he drives her violently into the ground. The impact leaves a bloodied crater and her body broken. The old man stands over the wreckage like an executioner. One surviving elf finally loses all pride and begs him not to come any closer. The young man tries to stop the old man, but he is ignored. A casual backhand from the old man sends the young man flying away. He crashes across the battlefield, carving a long trench through the earth. The old man mocks the elf's trembling submission before a mere human and calls it pitiful. He coldly states that he wants the location of her village. The elf, unable to reconcile her fear with her old beliefs, stammers that it is an elven village and cannot understand why a human would ask. To her, the old man now looks like death itself. His gaze alone is enough to break what little courage she has left. She realizes too late that defiance has become impossible. Her terror deepens as she understands he will not stop. Once she finally gives him what he wants, he thanks her with chilling sincerity. That gratitude comes too late for her, and she collapses into desperate apologies and pleas for mercy. The old man advances anyway, unmoved by her surrender. He draws his weapon and prepares another killing blow. A violent shockwave tears across the ground as he attacks. The surviving elf realizes with horror that he is now heading straight for the village. Even in terror, she laughs weakly at the fact that she alone has survived this far. Her body gives out, and she falls. Meanwhile, the young man drags himself out of the rubble, barely conscious. He curses the old man and realizes his armor is the only reason his ribs were not completely crushed. Still reeling, he tries to understand what he has just witnessed. His eyes fall on the corpse of the monster, and he starts questioning the old man's motives. He cannot understand why the old man would go to such extremes. Far away, the old man races alone across the devastated terrain toward the village. He moves with relentless speed, leaving only dust and torn earth behind him. The young man chases after him, desperate not to lose track. The old man's earlier question about hidden survivors keeps echoing in his mind. A trail of blood and destruction marks the path the old man has taken. The young man keeps pushing forward, still searching for him. The accusation about survivors and past slaughter continues to haunt him as he runs. He looks up into the dark sky, trying to make sense of the old man's obsession. At last he reaches the village and finds it already reduced to a field of corpses and fire. He can barely force out the word village as the scale of the massacre hits him. Bodies of elves lie scattered everywhere, cut down where they stood. He realizes he came as fast as he could and still arrived too late. Then he hears a faint cry from somewhere nearby. He freezes, suddenly alert. The sound means someone is still alive. Smoke returns at once, and he runs toward the voice. Pushing his senses to the limit, he detects one or two survivors close by. He tells himself it is not over yet if he can reach them in time. But as he closes in, he hears another victim begging for mercy before a scream cuts through the air. He arrives just in time to see the old man finish another execution with a sweeping slash. The young man can only stare at the old man in disbelief. The old man answers by unleashing another torrent of destructive force. The young man finally shouts the question he has been holding back and demands to know why the old man had to go this far. The old man admits he had been waiting to see who would dare ask that. He mocks the young man for trying to act like a hero as the ground erupts around them. The blast throws the young man helplessly through the air. The old man pursues without hesitation, keeping the pressure on. He gathers another vortex of force above himself, ready to crush any resistance. With a single motion, he turns the surrounding earth into a weapon. The attack detonates around the young man in a blinding burst. Buried in dust, the young man can only mutter in exhausted disbelief. Standing over another corpse, the old man dismisses the young man's ideals as the delusion of an unruly cultist rather than true heroism. He explains that he spent the journey thinking about this confrontation. Because he does not fully understand the world's collapse or the source of his own hatred, he had hesitated to interfere too quickly. When the young man presses him for what that means, the old man simply demands more. The young man argues that revenge would at least make sense, but slaughtering even those who surrendered cannot be justified. The old man rejects the young man's easy use of understanding and literally grinds him into the dirt for it. The young man fires back that the scavengers they met were not the ones who killed the old man's family, and that the old man treated mass murder as a right. The old man answers that the cruelty shown by the first 4 elves they met was not an exception but the natural result of the society they came from. In his view, some elves kill humans passively while others do it openly, but the difference is only in method. He insists they do not kill for faith or pleasure alone, but out of selfish convenience while convincing themselves humans are meant to suffer. By blaming humans, he says, they avoid facing the misery of their own condition. He claims that in Neo's soul such compassion might still be tolerated, but not here. According to him, Neo's soul preserves human lives only because slaves are useful as a power source, not because anyone values them. He declares that this land is nothing but a battlefield, and that preaching humanity here is naive. He reminds the young man that he has seen the world both before and after it fell apart. Even so, he says, he still refuses to believe that one person's will is meaningless. He frames his massacre as the path he has chosen for himself. Walking away, he asks whether the young man will still speak of mercy after seeing what he has seen. The young man, battered but unbroken, demands to know what truth he is missing. The old man answers that he is missing everything and is too young to tell recklessness from justice or to understand the lives these elves have lived. He turns his back as if the argument is already settled. But the young man reminds him that it was the old man himself who once taught him not to give up. He declares that he will choose his own path, not simply inherit the old man's hatred. He vows that even if he comes to witness the same horrors, he still will not surrender his convictions. He states plainly that he will not give up. For the first time, the old man pauses and truly looks at him. The young man meets that stare without backing down. The old man's expression shifts, as if weighing whether the boy's resolve is real. Instead of answering directly, he tells the young man to inspect the village for himself. Following that clue, the young man notices unfamiliar clothing among the dead and realizes something about this place is wrong. The old man refuses to explain further and says the truth will become clear when the young man returns to Archilon. Leaving the bodies behind, the young man begins searching the ruins for answers. He observes that the village is too small and too purely residential to function like a normal settlement. Since there were no nearby towns to share resources, he realizes the village could not have survived on its own as an ordinary community. That inconsistency leads him to suspect this place served a different purpose altogether. Then he finds a cache of ornate objects and jewelry hidden beside a corpse. The craftsmanship is unlike anything he has seen in Neo Soul, the mines, or even Archilon, suggesting a culture far older or entirely different. Holding the strange relics, he concludes that these are not human-made items at all and may date back more than a century, opening a new mystery behind the village and the old man's hatred. As he studies the ruins, he recalls that demi-humans were said to have appeared only a century ago, when the world was turning into a desert. That timeline unsettles him, because the records before him suggest an entire civilization could not have risen in only 100 years. Unable to read the unfamiliar script, he still realizes these ruins belong to a past far older and stranger than he had assumed. He admits he never questioned the existence of monsters and demi-humans, since they had always been part of the world he was born into. But that certainty breaks when he considers that they may not have simply appeared at all, and may have existed even earlier. He imagines a darker history in which humans slaughtered others for selfish gain and justified it by casting themselves as the victims. In that version of the past, blaming others would have spared humanity from facing the misery it created for itself. The evidence before him makes it seem less and less likely that demi-humans came to this land by choice, and a new possibility takes hold. He begins to suspect that some outside force may have brought them here. If such a being truly exists, he realizes this world may not belong to humans at all. That conclusion stops him cold as he stares into the ruins, trying to grasp what it means. The weight of the thought hardens into resolve. He looks upon a bloodied human corpse and concludes that what lies here belongs to humans, not to those they displaced. He understands why humans needed protected residences in the village. Anything outside their control could simply be murdered and seized. The abandoned structure around him becomes one more sign of a world built on that violence. He suddenly unleashes his power, blasting apart the ground and walls. Standing amid the collapse, he drives forward with grim determination. He throws himself into the destruction, forcing his way through the ruins as sand and debris surge around him. The crumbling pillars give way under the force, and the buried structure starts to break apart. The collapse spreads, swallowing bodies and wreckage alike beneath a rushing wave of sand. The torrent continues to consume the site until almost nothing remains visible. Breathing hard, he endures the dust and strain without backing down. He tells himself that burying all of this is the least he can do for the dead.